Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the ADEA's President Symposium on Men of Color in the Health Professions. My name is Dr. Omar Escondrillas, and I am the Senior Director of Policy Research with ADEA. Today, I have the wonderful pleasure of introducing Dr. Keith Mace. He is the Chair of the ADEA Board of Directors and the Dean of the University of Minnesota School of Dentistry. Dr. Mace.
Thank you, Omar. Good afternoon and welcome. All right, I like that. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. Oh, Baptist Church, right? Welcome to the inaugural ADEA President Symposium on Men of Color in the Health Professions. We gather for an important reason. We all know the numbers, so we have come together this afternoon to learn, to share best practices, and determine next steps with the goal of increasing the recruitment, retention, and graduation of men of color across the academic health professions. One of the reasons that I selected the 2022 ADEA Annual Session and Exhibition theme, Lifting as We Rise, is a need to focus on mentoring and developing future leaders in dental education. Underrepresented men of color are small in their representation throughout dental education, medicine, and most of academic health professions. Collectively, we can and must do better to eliminate these disparities. Collectively, we can and must do better to eliminate these disparities. During the symposium, you will have the opportunity to connect with colleagues and discuss impactful ways to increase the number of men of color in the health professions, particularly in our oral health workforce. You will also assist in developing strategies, providing recommendations for next steps, and designing initiatives to promote an inclusive, welcoming, and humanistic environment where all men of color can thrive and succeed. I would like to pause and take a moment to recognize the representatives of the members of the Planning Committee for the ADEA President's Symposium on Men of Color in the Health Professions. I would like to ask each of you to stand. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for your ideas, hard work, and dedication to diversifying the health professions and this important topic, expanding opportunities for historically underrepresented men of color to enter and succeed in dentistry, medicine, research, and throughout the academic health professions. As we all know, inclusive excellence builds the diversity and cultural competence continuum to solidify and embed the principles of access, diversity, inclusion, and equity, and belonging into the fabric of each of our organizations and institutions. The Commission on Dental Education, we refer to it as CODA, Standards 1-3 and 2-16 support the principle of inclusive excellence, diversity, and the creation of a humanistic dental education environment. Furthermore, it is these principles of equity, diversity, belonging, and inclusion, and that of supporting and sustaining a humanistic environment, which are critical to our foundational belief that we must take action to ensure that the academic health professions and related workforce are diverse, representative of the patients that they treat and the world in which we live. I am thrilled to see so many of you here today to be part of this important symposium. I look forward to hearing and learning from you this afternoon to make sure that dentistry, medicine, and the health professions are truly an option for historically underrepresented men of color. Again, on behalf of the ADEA Board of Directors, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the ADEA President's Symposium on Men of Color in the Health Professions. At this time, I would like to invite Dr. Karen West, ADEA's President and CEO, to provide remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mays, and good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you all here. First, I would like to thank our sponsors, the American Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for their support. I am grateful for our ongoing partnership over the years, and I look forward to working alongside you to build an even stronger culture of health. This is our initial convening of men of color in the health professions. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation has graciously agreed to help fund not only this symposium, but to assist us in further action across the health professions to increase underrepresented men of color matriculating and graduating from the academic health professions. RWJF's funding will assist ADEA in work with each of you and across the health professions to convene other meetings and develop activities over the next year to address the small men of color in the health professions. With this goal in mind, today's symposium is critical. One of ADEA's strategic planning goals is to develop and sustain an inclusive environment in which faculty, students, and administrators work together to create the future of dental education in an increasingly diverse and interconnected world. To do this, we must come together as a community to systemically dismantle educational and racial disparities, particularly those impacting men of color, not only in dental education, but through the P16 pathway. I would like to take a moment to recognize all the deans that are here today and the ADEA Board of Directors. I ask you each to stand. First, I would like to ask all the deans in the room, please stand. I would then like to add the deans of color to remain standing. Thank you. As I look out at each of you, I am grateful for your leadership. However, I realize as it relates to our convening this afternoon, there are few men of color. We can do better. I would like to ask the ADEA Board of Directors to stand as well. We thank you for your commitment to this symposium. Thank you for your leadership, and again, be seated. Last month, ADEA completed a report on students of color at U.S. dental schools. I invite you to read the report entitled Slow to Change, HURE Groups in Dental Education. In this report, we examine applicant, matriculant, and graduation data for historically underrepresented racial and ethnic HURE dental students. We also focus on model programs and best practices that are transferable in hopes that these programs and practices will assist our dental schools in increasing the representation of students of color. There is a section of men of color at U.S. dental schools, and the small numbers are more than concerning. At the beginning of the report, I issue a call to action. This call to action is not only for ADEA and the dental schools, but for everyone who has the potential to provide solutions. I call on every individual within dental education, our partners, our academic health professions, our sister organizations, to collectively develop strategies to increase the representation of underrepresented men of color in not only dental education, but across the health professions. You could read the call to action and access the Slow to Change HURE report on the ADEA website at adea.org/HURE. During the annual ADEA Chair of the Board Directors Retreat last June, Dr. Keith Mays, ADEA Chair of the Board, invited the presidents of Meharry, Howard, and Morgan State to talk with us about the important role that HBCUs have had and continue to play, this in the diversification of the medical profession and the oral health workforce. Frank conversations, questions, and a desire to be part of the solution led to additional conversations between the ADEA Board of Directors, ADEA staff, and me. Because of their leadership and commitment to increasing the number of Black men in medicine, we then reached out to Dr. Norma Pohl-Hunter, the AAMC Senior Director of Workforce Diversity. And we reached out to the president of AAMC, Dr. David Scorton. It is Dr. May's partnership, it is Dr. May's forward thinking, that of the ADEA Board of Directors, and our 16-year partnership with AAMC, that the Summer Health Professions Education Program that we have now led us here today. The ADEA President Symposium, Men of Color in the Health Professions, is just the beginning. We are here to not only discuss the staggering lack of men in color in the health professions, but to share best practices and explore our next steps as a collective body. In the Slow to Change report I mentioned, I share a quote from Dr. Nancy J. Cantor, Chancellor of Rutgers University in New York, from a 2015 Posse Foundation dinner. In my call to action, I asked the following question: how long, one might ask, can American institutions, educational and beyond, maintain our legitimacy with a public whose diversity is, according to William Frey, remaking the face of America, while so few make it to our door, no less through and up the ladder? I don't think it's exaggerating to call this a national crisis. Again, how long, one might ask, can American institutes, educational and beyond, maintain our legitimacy with a public whose diversity is remaking the face of America, while so few make it to our door, no less through and up the ladder, as we saw today? I don't think it is exaggerating to call this a national crisis. The shortage of men of color with doctorates in the biomedical sciences, dentistry, medicine, and the other academic health professions is at crisis level. That is why we gather this afternoon. Collectively, we can mobilize, pool our resources, and form strong partnerships to develop short-term and long-term strategies to remove barriers to success. I am looking to you at the conclusion of this symposium to not only assist us in developing recommendations and next steps, but I am also asking you to join me and the leaders throughout the health professions to ensure that young men of color can make it through our door, and no less through and up the ladder. Again, I welcome you to the inaugural ADEA President Symposium on Men of Color in the Health Professions. And at this time, I will turn the program over to Dr. Sonia Smith, our Chief Diversity Officer. Thank you.
I really don't have a lot of remarks to add to what Dr. Mays and Dr. West just shared with you. But I do want to take the opportunity to thank each of you for being here to engage with us on this important topic. How do we address the barriers and remove the barriers to improve access, opportunity, and basically, how do we basically recruit, retain, and graduate more men of color throughout the health professions? As I think about the work that needs to be done, I've had this conversation with Dr. West several times. This is not something that can be fixed overnight. So we have to think about short-term strategies, but we have to commit to the long haul. We cannot let this be the only time and the only reason that we come together is because this is at the ADEA Annual Session. There's much work to be done, but we can't do it alone. So Dr. West, I do thank you and Dr. Mays for your leadership and for your willingness to support this initiative. Also to my colleague, Dr. Norma Pohl, thank you so much, Norma, for when I raised this idea. We just had a brainstorming, a long session on the phone. And so it means so much to have AAMC as a partner and as a leader in this initiative. Thank you and thank your team. Moving forward, I don't want to leave anyone out, and so I'm normally hesitant to do this. But there are some organizations here that have a legacy of working with and expanding opportunities for underrepresented men and women of color in dentistry. And so I would like to ask the members of the Diversity in Dentistry Society to please stand. If you are a member of the Diversity in Dentistry Society, please stand. Okay. I would also like to ask that if you are a member of Diversity in Dentistry, the Mentorship, Inc. program. Is anyone here? Representatives from the Society of American Indian Dentists. Representatives from the National Dental Association. And I just finished my institutional membership, so representatives from the Hispanic Dental Association. I want to thank each of you for your commitment, your organization's commitment, and the legacy that you have of expanding opportunities for historically underrepresented men and women of color, but also for your broader mission, of expanding opportunities for everyone in oral health. I would be remiss if I did not also thank Dr. Chris Fox, the Chief Executive Officer of the American Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research and International Dental Association Research. I hope I got that right. Dr. Fox, would you please stand? I recognize Dr. Fox as a sponsor, but most of all, that every time we ask him to do something, and I know Dr. West asks you quite often, that you say yes, and so you always find a way. So I just want to thank you, Dr. Fox, personally. With that, I'm going to turn the mic over to Jason Lee. Jason is our Chief of Staff.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Smith. If you joined us this morning at the opening plenary, you saw that Dr. Smith received the chair of the ADEA Board of Directors citation It is well deserved. Congratulations again, Dr. Smith. It is a privilege to recognize our sponsors once again. We would like to thank the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for generously sponsoring today's symposium. Bringing us remarks on behalf of the foundation via video are Monica Hall and Wendy Yalowitz. Possibly bringing them by video or Thank
I
you.
am Monica Hall, Program Associate at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation.
And I am Wendy Yalowitz, Senior Program Officer at the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation.
We are pleased to support the American Dental Education Association's 2022 President's Symposium on Men of Color in the Health Professions on behalf of the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the nation's largest philanthropy dedicated solely to health.
At the foundation, we have a history of programming that focuses on advancing health equity, including research on the links between race and health. We recognize that if we don't focus on dismantling structural racism, we can't make progress toward a culture of health for everyone. We believe that a diverse and inclusive healthcare workforce is essential if we are to achieve that goal within our healthcare systems. We know a healthcare workforce that represents the diversity of our nation results in better care, service, and health outcomes for all people.
We believe that increasing diversity in the health professions is a necessary, though insufficient step in the long-term fight for racial equity. Wendy and I work closely together on a team that supports organizations and people creating the conditions to remove the institutional and systemic barriers that disproportionately affect historically marginalized groups of people, including men of color. We recognize that there are additional barriers, including both systemic racism and the historical disinvestment that young men of color face in their communities, schools, and in almost every other American institution before even stepping foot onto the health professions pathway. Together, these factors systematically inhibit the sense of belonging that men of color need to thrive at many of the academic institutions and health professions that have much to gain from their presence.
The work your institutions do is invaluable, but we know if we want to see change, real systems level change, then our institutions also have to work together to share best practices and other interventions when it comes to creating a culture where all students, especially men of color, can thrive. This work is even harder to do in the context of dual pandemics, COVID-19 and the national racial reckoning that has been much of a catalyst for national conversations on racial justice. We know we have a long way to go when it comes to eliminating racism and racial bias from our healthcare systems, from all our systems.
Yet, we are hopeful that together we can affect change. We thank you for your dedication to increasing diversity in the health professions and the key role you play and are playing in building a culture of health.
We can't wait to hear more about what you have to learn and share. Enjoy your convening. Thank you.
Once again, we thank the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for their generous support. We would like to thank the American Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research for generously supporting and sponsoring today's keynote. Speaking on behalf of the association is Dr. Jacques Noor, their president. Dr. Noor is the Donald Kerr Endowed Professor of Dentistry and has served as the chair of the Department of Cariology, Restorative Sciences, and Endodontics at the University of Michigan School of Dentistry since 2015. He has joint appointments as Professor of Otolaryngology and Professor of Biomedical Research at the University of Michigan. Dr. Noor has served as the chair of the Oral, Dental, and Craniofacial Sciences NIH Study Section and is currently a member of the National Advisory Dental and Craniofacial Research Council. He is the past chair of section on dentistry and oral health sciences of the American Association for the Advancement of Sciences, and recently became a fellow of the American Association for Dental Research. Dr. Noor has received the Distinguished Scientist Award, the William J. Guise Award, and the Hatton Award from the International Association for Dental Research. It is a privilege to have Dr. Noor with us today. Please welcome Dr. Noor.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. As president of the American Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research, I'm delighted to be here with you this afternoon and represent the ADEA in sponsoring this symposium. Some of you may not know that we recently expanded our name for our association as we transition from ADR to ADOCR. The name expansion reflects our commitment to building a vibrant and inclusive community that represents all colleagues who work to advance dental, oral, and craniofacial sciences. And within this context, the mission of enhancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in the health professions and scientific workforce is a high priority for ADOCR. We recognize that there is a critical shortage of underrepresented minorities in our profession and scientific field, and we are working very hard to address this concern. And as a Latino immigrant myself, I take this mission of enhancing diversity very, very seriously. Both ADEA and ADOCR consider the need to promote effective inclusion practices as central component of their mission. Let's see if we can move this. Yeah, I am pressing it. Oh, good, terrific, thank you. Indeed, the ADEA policy on diversity and inclusion describes clearly the commitment to develop and sustain institutional environments within the dental education community that are inclusive and supportive of diverse groups of students, faculty, staff, and patients. Let's try this. Oh, it's not? Oh. Is this? Okay. Terrific. Yeah. Okay. Good. I was pressing the wrong key. Okay. Likewise, the ADOCR is committed to promote a diverse research workforce that is representative of the population of the United States and that welcomes and empowers clinicians, scientists, and researchers from all backgrounds. I would like to share with you just a couple of examples of ADOCR initiatives. We developed the Faces of Dental Research section on our website that highlights the scientific contributions made by researchers from underrepresented groups. An initiative that I'm very proud of is the ADOCR Mentoring and Inclusive Network for a Diverse Research Workforce of the Future, also called the Mind the Future program. The primary goal of this program, funded by the NIDCR for 5 years, is to establish a mentoring network that will support and foster early career investigators from disadvantaged backgrounds. And finally, a key component of the diversity inclusion effort at the ADOCR is to ensure that our annual meetings maintain a focus on DEI matters, which is a goal that obviously we share with you with ADEA. So this coming Saturday in Atlanta, we have organized the Diversity Matters Advancing Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research Leaders program that will happen in Atlanta, and that has invited students from minority serving institutions and historically black colleges and universities, including Morehouse, Spelman, and Clark Atlanta University, to interact with ADOCR members to explore a career in dental, oral, and craniofacial research. However, just when we think that our organization is making a difference with DEI initiatives, we read the bio sketch of the accomplishments of Dr. Freeman Krabrovsky, and we are quickly humbled by the decades of consistent and unwavering dedication to moving the needle forward on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Since his early beginnings as a child leader in the civil rights movement and as an alumni of an historically black college and university, Dr. Krabrovsky has been an exemplar of a life that inspires change and that has championed the successes of others in school and beyond. Throughout 3 decades of transformational leadership at the University of Maryland, he has empowered minority students to create their own definition of themselves, expand their horizons, see their role in finding solutions to challenges that minority populations face, and to understand that success is never final. Every initiative he leads serves to increase students' drive to achieve through innovations in both education technology and active learning, and by creating an engaged community of students and research faculty. Dr. Krabrovsky has a slew of awards that are just way too fast to list. However, I would like to highlight here his appointment by President Barack Obama to chair the President's Advisory Commission on Educational Excellence for African Americans in 2012. I would like also to highlight his designation as one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine. Highlight his Lifetime Achievement Award by the American Council of Education, and also his most recent election in the National Academy of Engineering for the development of a national educational model for students from diverse backgrounds to excel in engineering and science. Awards aside, Dr. Krabrovsky has paid it forward throughout his entire life and has been instrumental in unequivocally supporting the ambitions and careers of extraordinary students throughout generations. Please help me welcome Dr. Freeman Krabrovsky.
Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it, this dream, into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the image of your most public self. Sculpt it into the shape of your most private need. Here on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face and say simply, very simply with hope, good morning. Good afternoon to everybody. Good afternoon. Good afternoon again. You are a very boring group. Let me start that way. I want to make you laugh. I hate to think of dentists as being so dull, but you're so proper somehow that I want to loosen things up a bit. I am a mathematician, and so I'm looking all the way. Wave your hands over by the wall if you can hear me, because this room, I want to make sure we all are together, all right? And I only have 15 minutes, but I want to say something that may inspire and something that may encourage you to look at with some specificity at what you might do to change the needle. My name is Freeman Krabrovsky. I've been president of the University of Maryland, Baltimore County for the last 30 years. My passion has been increasing the number of students of color, African Americans and others, Native Americans, Latinos, people from certain Asian groups that are still underrepresented, in pursuing careers in science. How many of you get goosebumps doing math? See, even among dentists, you don't get it. It gets 1 or 2 nerdy people in the room. That's it, right? I bring that up for a reason, because I often say when people say, what will it take to succeed in math and science? Well, you need to be able to read well, and you have to do word problems. Why do I say that? If you think of chemistry, they're word problems. Physics, they're word problems. And so I want you to begin thinking about, as a culture, one of our challenges, when people from the highest levels of dentistry don't even say they love math, imagine what the challenges are in America. I serve on the international math and science groups around the world, and we tend to be in that bottom quarter. I am from Birmingham, I grew up and had the chance of going to jail with Dr. King, that Morehouse man. And, and by far, I will tell you that the experience that he gave us that was so important as we were in that jail being treated like slaves, like animals, he and our parents outside the jailhouse looked in and said, what you do this day will have an impact on children not yet born. And we didn't understand the profundity, but it did mean we began to have more people going to college, from 3% in the 60s today, for blacks, for example, up to about 20%. But for all of Americans, in the 60s, it was only 10%. Today, we're up to about 30%. But why do I tell you that? So the majority of Americans have never had anyone graduate from college, number one. Number two, for blacks and Latinos, and the percentage is below 20%, Native Americans below that. The fact is that there are so few people who make it to college, and so we know the numbers who are considering professional schools, whether it's medicine or dentistry or PhDs, would be very small. Each of us has a story. My story includes going to jail, but it also includes having an amazing black male dentist whose name was Dr. Oscar Short, a graduate of the Howard University. And he was an amazing dentist and also a Sunday school teacher. And we were fortunate in the city to have a few black physicians, a few black dentists. But what I remember about him, besides working on my teeth regularly, was that he was an educator. He was taking that time to talk to me, to inspire me. Would have wanted me to be a dentist. I didn't like blood, so I wasn't going to do the dentistry thing. But I did like math and science. And he said, well, you just be your best. And so I start with that point that in honor of who just died in the last year, Dr. Oscar Short. My wife, on the other hand, grew up in Virginia and was the daughter of teachers in a small town outside of Lawrenceville, Virginia, where there were no black dentists, and there was only one dentist in that area, and his name was Dr. Killam. I can't make that up. I cannot make that up, all right? His name was Dr. Killam. But he was not a nice man to black people, was not a nice man. He would do only one thing for black people who had dental problems, pull their teeth. There was no such thing as getting a tooth filled or cavity or anything like that. And you could only see him after all the whites had been served, and you came in through the back door. And so my wife was very fortunate never to have a dental problem until she was 21. And she came down, we were married then, after graduating from Hampton, and she came and was amazed there was a black man dentist. It was just, I mean, because her view of dentistry was Dr. Killam. Her baby sister had dental problems, had to go to this man, and when he was only going to pull her teeth, it was just too awful that my parents-in-law took her to Petersburg, where there was a dentist, not black, but a white dentist, who was not nice, but he did work with her on her teeth. But because of the negative experience of dentistry in that family, my baby sister-in-law decided to become a dentist. Became a dentist. She went to Fisk and then to Herb-Bahari and practices dentistry. She's had 2 practices in Northern Virginia and in Southern Maryland and does extremely well. And what she said was that she wanted to treat people the way people should be treated. And she understood the nobility of helping people to have a sense of confidence in their mouths. And she also was trying to decide between majoring in art. She was very good in sculpting and things. And she began to learn things about how you use your hands, and she was good in math and science. And so she did become a dentist. Well, the final part of that story is, years later, now that she's doing really well and all of that, her daughter is now in her first year of dental school at the University of Maryland. We're very proud of Taylor. And she did it because she loved seeing what her mother did for people. And so I asked Taylor to pull together the students, the black students there, and some other students of color in the dental school to tell me what should I be saying about increasing the number of men of color. And there were some things in dentistry and blacks and people of color in general. And there's several things. First of all, I want to commend the Maryland Dental School. My campus is a science and engineering school, Research One campus out by the airport. The dental school is a part of the professional schools downtown. University of Maryland, Baltimore, medical school, dental, and all. We are sister institutions and work closely together. But the key is that she pulled together, and interestingly enough, that dental school, and the dean of that dental school, Mark, is a UMBC graduate. I'm very proud of him. The fact is that they have 24 blacks in the first year of dental school. Give them a round of applause for that. 24. And eight are men. And the first thing as I'm talking to and getting some from women and men is that they recognize, even among the students of color, they need more men in the groups. They accept that. So one of my recommendations is, as you think about doing things for men, the women can be very helpful in working together. It's the genius of the and versus the tyranny of the or. I wish I'd said that. That's Jim Collins, all right? But it's the idea of that. And let me tell you some of the things that the guys said and some of the young women. They said, why did you get to dental school? There were alumni who would come back to their campuses. My little niece went to Spelman, for example, but who would come back and they would get to work with them, and they could have that student dentistry association on their campus. They talked about the idea that dentistry changes lives, and they got to see that. They talked about the challenge of having somebody to shadow, that is a real challenge for a lot of students who don't have that experience. They also talked about the fact that applying to dental school is so expensive, and that there's a need of like $1,000 plus $300 supplies for one, and then not knowing which schools to apply to, you know, and obviously wanting to look at Meharry and Howard for sure, you know, and looking at Atlanta. The fact, though, is that they needed more guidance. And that was, of all the things they said to me, it was about more guidance. But I want to give them credit that Maryland Dental School has, from 2016 to 2021, been the large chapter awardee of the National Dental Association for 5 years in a row. Give them a round of applause for what they've done. Now, with that said, because I don't have much time, this is what I want you to think about. I've spent my life figuring out what do we do to get more people of color into science and succeeding. Now, our goal was to produce PhDs in science. You see, there is no real money available right now to produce physicians or dentists. The money from NIH right now is to produce PhDs. And so one of the things we did, because every black kid, for example, Latinos too, they will think, well, you're a real doctor if you're an MD or you're a dentist, because they've rarely seen PhDs. And so one of the things we did was to say we will also produce MD PhDs. So today we are the #1 producer of bachelors who go on to complete PhDs in the natural sciences and engineering, and the #1 producer of blacks who go on to complete MD PhDs. Give us a round of applause for that. But what we've learned in producing PhDs in STEM and MD PhDs would be the same lessons we need to think about when talking about producing more dentists. There's several things I want to say. I want you to watch, because I can't talk but so much today, I want you to look at the 60 Minutes piece on the Mauhoff program. Of all the things we do, we take their phones away in the summertime. I got hate mail for that. But literally, and who was it that told us to take the phones away during the summer? I mean, every week, it was the students of one group that said, if you want students to bind and become a cohort, you take the phones away so they work with each other rather than still talking with their high school friends. This was the summer before their freshman year. #2, the program began actually for black men back in 1989, because the men of color are always at the bottom of the list academically. We know that that's an issue, particularly for black and Latinx. It's a critical point, right? And we wanted to understand, and some people were upset we were doing something for men, but women of color said, please do this. Please do this, because our brothers and our sons need more support. It's not about not being for women also. We know we want to continue to support women, but we have to have specificity. Some things for women, for example, on my campus, women in computer science, the paucity of women in computer science. That's an area where you don't have women. But when you talk about men in all these areas, and so there are 2 or 3 things I want you to do. I want you to look at the latest article in Issues in Science and Technology. If you put my name in there, it's on moving the needle. I chaired the National Academy's Committee on Underrepresentation in Science. And what we found was that the vast majority of students of all races who begin with a major in science will leave it within the first 2 years. The first 2 years of science are called weed-out courses. And the fact is that for Asians even, only 41% of those who started with a major in science graduate with a major in science. For whites, it was about 32%. For blacks and Latinos, Native Americans, it was about 20%. Okay? And most of those students who graduate don't have a B average. You cannot go to med school. You cannot go to dental school if you don't at least have about a B in those areas. You know that. And the other piece of just a piece of, when you get C's in the first year of chemistry, you're not going to get B's and A's in the next year. And so strategy that we used, one was to have them retake the course. They cried, but they did it. And then they went on and they got the PhDs and the MD PhDs. Secondly, we rethought the notion of chemistry so that if you look at the Chemistry Discovery Center, we call it the CDC, it looks at group work, more collaboration, more real-time assessment using problems out of the biotech companies on our campus and mixing the groups up. And we've seen much more success with that group. The third thing was we had to give them funding. You cannot wait tables 20 hours on the outside and major in biochemistry. It does not work. It does not work. All right. And the fourth thing was to get allies, faculty members who were willing to help us. Look at my TED Talk. It's on the 4 pillars of college success in science. It is about high expectations, not just of the students, though, but of us, of faculty. You see, if I put a problem on the board in differential equations and everybody says, oh, he's smart, and then everybody flunks the test, did I teach it? You get my point? I presented it, but I didn't teach it because if they don't learn it, I didn't teach it. So higher expectations of ourselves, building community, and then this is when we say it takes scientists to produce scientists. I will tell you it takes dentists to produce dentists. And that means before they get to dental school even, being connected. The reason we have more engineers today, black engineers, is that NSBE, the coordinated approach to having these chapters on campuses and funding that we get to give them scholarship money. They need scholarship money to help them out. What the Maryland Dental School has done is to have designated scholarship money for underrepresented minorities, and that helps. And so make no mistake about it, all the goodwill in the world, if there's not money to fund these kinds of initiatives, it will not work. And then using analytics to understand who are the young men who are doing fairly well, who've given enough support, can make it to move to the next level. I will tell you that most important, I want you to think about specificity, those strategies that will help young men to feel a sense of self, to know they're doing it not just for themselves, but that they become the Oscar Shorts, the examples for the next generation. You know, I want to leave you with 2 inspirational ideas. Number one of our black men just became top last year, top young investigator in neuroscience in the world. He's at Duke. He's a young black man from my campus, went on and got an MD, PhD in neuroscience. He's invented a pacemaker for the brain to address schizophrenia. Imagine that. And then the last Surgeon General was one of my kids, Jerome Adams, who literally had never seen a black male or female doctor in his life, from Southern Maryland. Came and became inspired, went on to med school, Indiana, then Berkeley for grad in public health, and then at Indiana Commission, and then the Surgeon General, now is at Purdue. But the last story I want you to think about as you think about producing men of color, I want you to think about people of color. This COVID crisis has shown us we need more people from our groups, helping to inspire people to believe in science or medicine or dentistry. When I gave a commencement address for the New England School of Dentistry when they started that new dental school up in New England, what was so striking to me was that because some of those New England states didn't have a dental school, you could look at the teeth of the people and you saw the lack of health in those people. When I chaired the Margaret Casey Foundation and went around to children and old people, poverty, you see it in their mouths. And this is the nobility of the work of dentistry, that you changed lives beyond a smile to educate people about their health in general. And so my last story that gives me goosebumps, I recruited a young woman from rural North Carolina. She comes to UMBC, goes back to Chapel Hill, works at NIH, and she becomes the first black woman in the world to create a vaccine, Dr. Kizzmekia Corbett. Give her a round of applause, would you? But this is what's possible when we believe we can do this. We must see the change we want to make, but we must find the money. Make no mistake, anything else is not making the mark. The only reason we've been able to create, we are number 1 in the production of these blacks. Number 2 right now is A&T. Number 3 is Howard, number 4 is Spelman, and it goes down the list. But in the life sciences, my alma mater, grad alma mater, Illinois, is there. University of Florida is there, and that's my last point. That yes, we want to work with minority serving and HBCUs, but we must look at the data to find the places that are having some success with blacks and Latinos in science. And finally, we must tell them you don't really have to major in science to become a dentist or a physician. I find that the wealthiest kids so often at the Ivies will major in the humanities, social sciences. They take the science they need for that test. First couple of years of chemistry, couple of years of biology. Why? Because we in the STEM areas give people C's all the time. And so we've got to teach middle-class people, people of color, you don't have to major in biology to go to med school or to dental school. We must bring the specificity to it. So I want you to stand up for a minute. I'm going to give you something to pump you up. Get up, get up, get up, get up. You're all proper dentists. You're all proper dentists. Come on, get up, get up, get up, get up. I'm old, so I know you can do it. Repeat after me. Thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. One more time. Thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. Here's your test, Dennis. Watch your thoughts, they become your And here's my point. Here's my point. You were saying it in a robotic manner, but you weren't mindful. We must be mindful in what we do. Now when I tell you you're gonna have a test, you won't just shout it, you'll remember it so you get ready for the test. You got it? Thoughts, words. And wait a minute, y'all can be louder than that. Stop being so proper. Come on. Thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. Here's your test. Watch your thoughts, they become your. Watch your words, they become your. Watch your actions, they become your. Watch your habits, they become your. Watch your character, it becomes your dreams and values. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Krabrovsky. So we have time for Q&A. We have about 5 minutes. Q&A, any questions?
Give me a question. Come on.
Don't be shy.
Otherwise, I'm going to say Dennis or Dole. Come on. Let's go here, and then we go to Morehouse. All right. She's bringing that mic to you right now.
They just want to all hear you. Check what do.
So I'm Cheryl Lee, the president of the National Dental Association. And so we've been, thank you. So we've been discussing for quite some time how to increase the male students coming into dental school. And so we were talking about going into, starting with the elementary schools. And so as females, what would be the suggestion for encouraging them, because we don't look like you, but we think.
Yes.
And so I just wanted your advice as to how to do that.
My first response is something we learned from the National Academies. It is important to look at elementary through high school, but if you look at all the programs, K through 12, and you look at the return on investment, you will find very few of the people you work with in elementary through high school in that particular program ever become dentists. And just go and look at it. The place where you need to focus attention is the undergrad experience, because those are students who've made it to college. They've got a reasonable chance of doing well in science, and it's about identifying a group of students. But to do that, you've got to go to colleges where you're going to have support from the leadership of the campus saying this is important, we'd like to produce more dentists. And let me just be honest, I looked at it the other day, we got 300 blacks with an interest in pre-dentistry, but we don't do a lot to support them. We do a lot for PhDs in science and MD PhDs, but we really have not. Just being honest with you, a few will go on, but not because the university has partnered with the National Dental Association. You know, you can get to places where you've got a number of blacks, and it's not just HBCUs. I'm gonna say that again, because 80% of blacks are not in HBCUs, and I love Hampton, all right? But what I'm saying is find schools that are doing pretty well with blacks or Latinos. The best place in the country for producing Latino PhDs is University of Puerto Rico, 2 of those campuses. Then University of Texas, El Paso. And then there's some others after that. But the point is, identify some universities, begin working with those first-year students, create a culture of a cohort. If it's 5, 10, or 15. We started with 19 black men in the first year of Meyerhoff in '89. We've now produced 1,000+ graduates, of whom more than half are men. Give us a round of applause for that, for black men. And so the idea of emphasizing the importance of having these groups, but we have women and men serving as mentors, okay? Both will do it, you know, and I mean, some of my best mentors are white men who have learned how to work with them effectively. We've got to use anybody who can be supported. When I was at Illinois, in that first program in abstract algebra, believe me, there was nobody black. There was nobody, and there was only one woman out of 100 faculty, one white woman, and she wasn't even tenure track. But she'd look at me as if to say, I understand what you're going through, right? You know, and when I would go into that class, the guy would say, this is algebraic topology. He'd look right at me as if to say, you're in the right class, right? And all the white guys would smirk. And then I go to another class, and it's set theory, and before they would say it, I say, this is set theory, right? They say, sucker, I'm supposed to be here, right? Is the idea. You know, but you got to do all of it, but you got to, tough skin is a part of it in science. Tough skin, you got to teach them that some of the best people will be hard on you, right? And that it's not easy, you know, to be a dentist. People say, I want to help people, but you got to get past the chemistry, right? And those kinds of things, we got to help students to understand. That's a great question. Great question.
Thank you. And we have time for 2 questions, and I know you had, because we're running out a little bit of time.
Hello. I'm Dennis Mitchell from Columbia University, but a proud graduate of Howard College of Dentistry. I want to ask you, I hear you talk about cohorts and cohorts and cohorts.
Yes.
So talk to me about critical mass.
Yes.
And the value of it in success of people of color in particular.
Yeah, I would say this. He asked about critical mass. I have seen cohorts work with 3 to 5 students because we also do the same thing. I was asked by Cindy Williams, dean at Duke years ago, to help him figure out how to get some more blacks who would become physician faculty members. Not just finish med school, but go to the faculty. So we started working on it, and we put a cohort together. And right now, we have 3 tenured and 1 not tenured black men on the medical faculty at Duke because we started with a small group who had that as their purpose, okay? And the fact is that having that sense of purpose and supporting each other, and then teaching them how to work with people who are not black or Latino, to get into that, you know, I would say my students were always saying, because our biggest minority group is Asian. Any place that's really good in science has a strong Asian population in America. We know that, okay? So they would say, but they work. I said, go get in the middle of them and smile. Just go get in the middle and say, I need your help, right? So it wasn't just like the cohort working by themselves. Get in that middle of that good group, right? And work with them. And we do know that kids who come with an international background often are more structured, more disciplined. So many of my black students are from the islands and other places. We mix it up with kids from Baltimore City to kids from Jamaica, right? But it's that cohort in a larger environment, teach them how to work with people from other backgrounds also. We do not make it by ourselves. Give me a round of applause for that idea. We do not make it by ourselves, okay?
Thank you very much. And we have one more question.
My name is Jennifer Webster Syriac. I'm at the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research, and I'm the deputy director there.
Very nice.
And our director is here, Rita D'Souza. But I want to share 2 things. One is there are significant opportunities for people of color in dental research.
Yes.
For PhDs, for engineers who are interested in biomaterials.
Yes.
Okay? There's lots of work to be done to help us move the needle on oral health.
Yes.
So I want you to include DDS PhDs.
So let me say, and let me tell you, we have produced 2 or 3, a Latino from Michigan and 2 or 3 others, but let me say this to your institute. I tried 20 years ago to get them to give me some money at the undergrad level to do that, and they would not do it. Let me put it out there to you. I'm keeping it real here now, okay? You know, now you know, if you got some money for me, I can produce them. I'm a businessman.
I'm with you, okay? So let us touch base, but know that there are active programs between Maryland and NIH, and we are committed to building things.
If
so
we
let
can do
us
that from
talk.
the undergrad, Rod Pettigrew, some of you know that famous Morehouse man is a dear friend. Rod when he was the head of NIBIB, he gave us $500,000 a year, every year, to produce more kids in those areas. When Ken Olden was the black head of NIEHS, he found money to give us that in environmental. So we produced a lot of PhDs in environmental science and engineering. When those black men left those institutes, I couldn't get a dime. Now that's I've told Francis that and everybody else. So I'm throwing it out to you. If you got money for me, we can produce the DDS PhDs. Give me a round of applause, all right?
We're there.
Keeping it real, keeping it real. One more time, thoughts, words, actions, habits, character, destiny. Come visit UMBC. Send me your smart kids. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that wonderful and inspirational keynote address, Dr. Krabrovsky. So we're going to forego the break just because we are running over time. So I'd like to welcome our next speaker, Dr. Jacob Collins from the Society of American Indian Dentists, and he's Associate Dentist with Desert Hills Dental Care. Please welcome Dr. Collins.
Thank you, everyone, for being here today. Following Dr. Krabrovsky is a tough act to follow. But I'm glad to be here today and to see all of your faces and be a part of this symposium here for men of color. I am representing the Society of American Indian Dentists, and I want to start by sharing a quote from the great philosopher Sir Isaac Newton. He says, "If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulder of giants." I just want you all to know that today, that's the reason that I'm here as well. As a Native American student, there are a lot of struggles in getting into higher education and getting into dentistry and to overcoming some of those disparities and discrepancies that make it difficult to get into dentistry. And when there are good mentors, when there are good programs, and there are good people out there that are trying to help the next generation come up and try to bridge some of those gaps, that's what makes a difference in the lives and in the education of these underrepresented minorities, groups of people, in changing the future. So a couple of things I want to just talk about. Native Americans oftentimes are included with Alaskan Natives in the different statistics that we look at in getting into educational programs and occupational. So I'm going to talk about both of these groups kind of together. These Native American students comprise a very small number of both undergraduate and graduate programs throughout the United States today. Looking at it from the perspective of high school students getting into higher education, only about a quarter actually enroll into higher education programs, and out of those, less than half of them successfully matriculate and graduate from these programs, which makes it a real challenge for a lot of you from that dental perspective and saying, hey, where are the Native American students and how can we help them be successful in dental school? Dr. Krabrovsky mentioned that we've got to get them through their undergraduate successfully so that they can navigate an intensive dental school curriculum and become dentists in the future. As far as those that do become dentists, it's a very small percentage. I work in a dental office in the northwestern Four Corners area of New Mexico. In that county, we service a large region that has probably 70% of our patient population being Native Americans from the Navajo Nation, the Hickory Apache Reservation, and out of all the dentists in that area, I am the only one that is a Native American. And there are just so many Native people there, but as far as the oral healthcare providers, there's a big discrepancy in what's actually happening out there. Some of the challenges that are faced by the natives, a lot of times our sample size is so small that research doesn't really look at our statistic as being something significant that needs to be considered. In our high schools, I know for myself personally, there was no college preparation, no college readiness. There was nothing to help prepare me to go to college. In fact, I wasn't even planning on it. I thought I was going to be a great mechanic one day. But I ended up getting there through a very roundabout way. Because of that, there's not a lot of family members or friends that the Native American students and children see that have gone on to college. For those that do have, it's a small percentage as well that have family members that have actually made it there. And then the dental experience, there's a lot of needs, a lot of high needs in dentistry amongst these Native American people. 1 in 6 one-year-olds have early childhood caries. For those of you that treat children, you know they can be a challenge. These are just one-year-olds. These are children that can't even talk to you. More than 50% of children 1 to 5 have early childhood caries. Adults have a lot higher prevalence of having oral disease that just goes untreated for long periods of time. They deal with a lot of dental pain and a lot of issues that are not really being met as far as oral health care goes. Because of this, because of the dental experience that a lot of Native Americans deal with, going into dentistry doesn't sound like a great idea to them. Amongst my family and friends, when a lot of them found out I was going into dentistry, they thought, "You're crazy. You want to spend your career working in people's disgusting mouths? That's gross." And when they do go in, they're getting teeth pulled left and right, and they're coming out with their mouth stuffed full of gauze and tears running down their face, and then the next sibling's going in after that. And so it really paints kind of a bad picture for dentistry amongst a lot of these Native Americans. So changes have to be made. Something different has to happen. Historically, if we see what has been happening, it's not really working well. Early educational intervention is a must. And at the dental level, it's important that they have intervention and support educationally there. But also in undergrad and even in high school, students need support. They need motivation, and they need to have the help that they need in order to get into a dental program. Support groups and mentors are a big key. A couple of my mentors are here today that helped me get into and get through dental school. Financial aid, which was also mentioned, and the importance of making sure that once students are there, they have the help to get through it. When I got accepted into the University of Michigan and I realized how much dental school cost, I think after I was accepted, there was probably 3 times that I thought, I don't know if I really want to take on that financial challenge. That's a lot of money to get through it. But financial support is a big part of it. And I know there's a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of organizations that are striving to help Native Americans financially, academically. Society of American Indian Dentists being one that has made a lot of effort to strive to bridge that gap, to provide scholarships that go towards dental school preparation and DAT prep, and just helping them to prepare themselves to be successful in challenging dental school curriculum. And then the continued support and network. Getting into dental school is a challenge on its own. Getting through dental school is another challenge. And I have had the opportunity myself. I just graduated last year, and so I am still in my rookie year as a dentist. In a way, I'm still trying to learn how to dentist, but it's happening little by little, and I'm making some waves there. But continually moving forward and supporting Native Americans and helping them understand that once they get there, it's a continual thing. I've had the opportunity to associate with the National Dental Association, the Hispanic Dental Association, the Society of American Indian Dentists, and seeing how these organizations pull together to support each other and also to support and prepare the next generation to come up. So I myself have had the opportunity to find good mentors, and now at this point in my life, I look forward to being a good mentor and helping that next group to rise and meet the challenges so that we can bridge the gap in dental health care and that disparity for the underrepresented minority groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Collins. So now we'll go ahead and see a short video by the Association of American Medical Colleges before I bring on Dr. Paul Hunter.
They say the road less traveled is the scariest. But for me, there wasn't much of an option. I was a first-generation college student who didn't have life figured out. My family supported me, but questioned if I'd ever make it. I am now well into my career, and many would consider me successful, but I have to admit that I am still insecure about my own worthiness. I vividly remember my time in college. I was afraid to raise my hand during lectures because I didn't want to embarrass myself. Every time I took a test, I was sure that I didn't study enough. And every time I excelled, I believed that I had fooled everyone. My self-doubt has a name: the imposter syndrome. You want to know how I overcame it? I visualized success.
And now let me welcome Dr. Norma Paul Hunter, Senior Director of Workforce Diversity for the Association of American Medical Colleges.
Good afternoon. Just want to say gracias, thank you to Drs. Mays, West, and Smith for inviting AMC to join in this important effort. If you're not familiar, AMC represents the MD grantee institutions across the United States, Canada, as well as Puerto Rico. And yes, Puerto Rico is part of the United States and they're US citizens, okay? I have to say. So I'm here to talk a little bit with you about some of the work that we've been doing around the representation of men of color within medicine. So I'll start with the Summer Health Professions Education Program. Some of you may be familiar. As Dr. West mentioned, we've had a long-standing partnership with the American Dental Education Association to support this program, funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. And it's incredible because they've been funding this program for over 30 years, really looking at increasing the representation of Latinos, African Americans, American Indians, and Alaska Natives, students who are economically disadvantaged and have other educational disadvantages across the nation. To date, it's served nearly 30,000 young people aspiring to become health professionals. And we have some incredible data showing that at least 65% of these students apply to medical school, nearly 70% apply to dental school, and many more have pursued PhDs, MD degrees, degrees in law, education, and other areas. So we know that these programs are very critical in terms of the pathway to the health professions and other careers. At the same time, while these programs are very important or essential, they're not sufficient, and we can tell that by the data. When looking at SHPP, we were recognizing, and SMDP actually, we were recognizing that the number of young men was beginning to decrease each year from 1% to 2%. And we recognized that we couldn't let this happen. So it was almost like an early indicator for us because SHPP attracts freshman and sophomore college students. And what's critical about it is that we are always looking at the data. And I would say, and I would implore all of you, as you're looking at your systems, as you're looking at your institutions, let the data guide you because the data is going to give you really important information about what's happened, what is happening, and what needs to change. And so for us, we recognize that the young men were beginning to decline from 40 to 38 to 36%, and we're like, this is a problem, right? And again, it's an early indicator because we're looking at college students. And so we decided that we wanted to take a little bit more of a strategic approach to the engagement of young men. At the medical schools, and I'm sure at dental schools as well, you can be passive recipients of your application pools, right? You don't really have to do much because a lot of people aspire to become physicians or dentists or to enter other health professions. And we recognize that we cannot just sit back and wait for individuals to come to us, that we really have to be strategic in our communications and our outreach. And so what we decided to do is really look at our, for example, collateral material. What are the materials communicating? We recognize that even the pictures within our brochures on our website often didn't have young men, right? So if you don't see yourself visually in a place, you may question, do I really belong there? We decided to say, we need to have more direct communication. What are the testimonials that we could put together of men who communicate about the impact of these programs, the benefits of the programs, and how other men need to be engaged and to enter the health professions. As well, what we find is important that we can't do it alone. I love the concept of the and, not the or. And that's why we're here today with you, because we know that although our focus is on medicine, we can't do this alone, because the reality is all of us need men to be part of our health professions. And those strategic partnerships are critical. So not only working with undergraduate institutions, working with fraternal organizations, working with youth development organizations, looking at the community level, right? Because many of our institutions are anchor institutions, and we have to give back to our communities. Many of our institutions say, oh, I can't find the men. You can't now say you can't find them. You have to be part of the solution to build those young men, right? To bring them, to attract them, make them feel like they belong. And those are some of the things we've tried to do with our program, including having a committee dedicated to engaging young men from all communities. And what we found is these various strategies have helped us to increase the applications and the matriculation by 3%. Now, I know that's small, but if you think across the nation, a program that serves nearly 1,000 students, that's good, right? But we cannot do it alone. And that's what's important for us. We have to break down those barriers across the health professions. Because even though Dr. Krabrovsky said, we have to start in college, we know that that early intervention is critical. We know that our public health, our public education systems are failing our young people, and as a result, they're not getting into our health systems. So that early engagement is critical, and we could do that together with all of our resources. So I want to talk a little bit of a case within medicine where we saw that there's a significant national crisis. And this is the case especially with our American Indian Alaska Native communities. There's a national crisis across the health professions. And what we saw that was in 1978, we had more men applying to medical school than we had in 2014. Again, we have more Black men entering medical school, applying and entering medical school in 1978 than we had in 2014. So again, the data said, even though many of our members told us we're not seeing the Black men, we're not seeing the applicants, we're not seeing everyone, the data was kind of a clarion call for us, right? And that's why the reports, as Dr. West mentioned, Slow to Change, is so critical for our efforts, because we need the data to drive what we're doing. And although since the release of the report, we've seen some increases, including this past year, we had 20.8% more men matriculating, Black men matriculating to medical school, we know that there's so much work to be done. And this has been named by NASM as a national crisis, right? We cannot rest on our laurels. And what we've done at the association is partner with the National Medical Association to create an action collaborative for Black men in medicine. And this is intended to be a coalition building framework for us to really look at systems change. Because as I mentioned before, while many programs like the Summer Health Professions Education Program is significant, it's made a difference. Many of you could speak to the pathway programs that you have at your institutions and how they make a difference. They're not sufficient, right? Because that's why we're here today. What we've done before is working, but it's not enough. And so for us, partnering with the National Medical Association, that's the largest association representing Black physicians, we are looking at what is it that we need to do together. So these are some of our goals. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to look at replicable solutions. We already know what the problems are. Use the data to drive our action and work with key stakeholders along what we call the medical education continuum, which we see starting as early as elementary school, all the way through graduation, right? Because Dr. Collins mentioned, it's sometimes going to be hard getting through the health profession school as well. And so this is just a framework that we've started with. The AMC and the NMA are what we call the backbone organization. So we are using the collective impact model in order to drive how we see change moving forward. And so we're going to enlist action partners, many of you hopefully here, that are going to work with us over time, because this is not just, one-time solution, one program, one conversation. We really want to come together to think about how do we begin to change. And these are some of our core members. We're working across the continuum with K-12 teachers, with leaders who have done science on the experience of Black men in higher education. This is what we see as our kind of a storyboard, right? Starting, as I said early, K through 8, understanding what the data tells us already, what those gaps are. But we decided to say, let's work, because we can't handle everything right now. Let's focus on the last 2 years of high school through the first 2 to 3 years of medical school. What is it that we can do a deep dive to understand what the issues are? And again, systems-based interventions, we wanted to streamline our efforts and look at what's sustainable. And so this is the collective impact model that I mentioned, a backbone. You need leaders, you need drivers, you need individuals, organizations that are involved in systems like AMC and ADEA to really begin to drive this, right, across the nation. Now, we can't do it alone, as I mentioned. Our organization is good at some part of this. Another organization could be maybe stronger in working with high school students. So those mutually reinforcing activities, how do we come together almost like pieces of a puzzle to solve this issue, right? So we're not duplicative, but we're looking at how we can coordinate our actions to really make change. Continuous communication, always working with one another, sharing what we're doing right, what we learned was wrong. That continuous communication is critical, a common agenda, and that's what we're going to work on. We're going to identify as a coalition what are at least the top 2-3 priorities that we want to address over 5 to 7 years, recognizing that it takes time to make systems change and to be accountable, to have those shared metrics. So I'm hoping that as we have conversations here, each of you can think about, at my institution, at my organization, what is going to help me keep our leaders accountable for the change that we want to see? How are we going to measure that change over time? What is it that we want to see happen differently, and what is the data going to tell us at the end? And so these are some of our accomplishments, really. We've been together since 2020. And these are some factors. When we came together, we looked at the data, we looked at research, we examined lived experiences, because there is limited data on the experience of Black men, in particular in medicine. So we said, what about those lived experiences of leaders, learners across the continuum? And these are the factors that we identified that we feel are important to look at. Financing and funding, again, you need money, we need money. Because the reality is, when we think about Black men, Latino men, American Indian, Alaska Native men in particular, they're at the bottom of our economic ladder in the United States. We have to recognize that, right? Also, information access, MCAT, DAT, name whatever standardized test, right? And how we use the test in order to really begin to advance diversity in our institutions. How do we identify talent? And with all of this, and this was mentioned earlier, we have to recognize that there's systemic racism, there are public narratives that influence how we think about men of color, and we have to change our institutional culture and climate. So it's not only about increasing the number of individuals, but it's looking at our institution and our climate and changing. So all these things in concert are very necessary in order to make this change. And for us, within academic medicine, we realize there are factors that we cannot control, right? We cannot control the K through 12 system. And unfortunately, many of our leaders say, well, that's not our thing, right? We're here in dental school. No, it is our thing. It is our responsibility. Because we're expecting, and it was funny how Dr. Krabrovsky mentioned, well, you give me the money, I'll produce them for you. Right? We rely on our undergraduate institutions to produce dentists, to produce physicians, to produce other health professions, but why would they do it? What's in it for them? We rely, many times we hear young people say, I don't have a pre-health advisor, that pre-health advisor wasn't any good, or I didn't have access. We're relying on a broken system. There's no system for pre-health advising. They don't even have standardized training. This is much of what we've learned about what are the systems factors that are concerns, but what are some facilitating factors as well? We've heard so much about support systems, mentoring. Those are systems issues, right? It's not a person level issue. So how do we begin to intervene? And so this is one example that the committee decided, the collaborative, to focus on pre-med advising, pre-health advising, identifying again, there's no formal training, but yet we rely on them. Right? We rely on these individuals that often aren't trained, that in many cases, the institutions where we need to go, they're not formal positions, they're faculty, often in the sciences who've never been dentists or physicians or other health professions, to advise students. So there's so much work that we could do as associations, as institutions, as organizations to really change this. And this is our proposed roadmap. We have an online community. We're going to be building our strategy over time to then look at how each organization, institution that's committed to this is going to move the needle, right? And what are our metrics along the way so we can learn from that experience and think about and know what works. And so these are some partner organizations that we are focused on. And if you want to learn more, please join us. And this is part of it. This is part of being here, being together for us to build our capacity as leaders to make change. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pohunter. We're going to take about a 5-minute break while we set up the panel for our next speaker. So just take 5 minutes and we'll be back. But we will be back in 5 minutes. So, well, welcome everyone back from your break. We will, just to continue on with our time, we apologize again that we're running a little bit behind, but I'd just like to introduce our next panel of speakers. Actually, Dr. Todd Esser, who is the Assistant Dean of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion and Clinical Assistant Professor at the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, will do the pleasure of introducing the guests in the panel. Dr. Esser.
Thank you, Dr. Contreras. Thank you. No vision and you perish, no dream and you are lost. Your heart must ever cherish some faith at any cost. Some hope, some dream to cling to, some rainbow in the sky, some melody to sing to, some service that is high. Today, I envision a day when the parity gap that exists for people of color, in particular men of color, no longer exists. Can you join me in that vision? Can you see that? Can you see that vision? And collectively and collaboratively together, we can do it. So I am honored to be here today. We have an esteemed panel to continue the conversation. Already, we've had an amazing time with our speakers that have gone before, and we're looking forward to continuing that with this esteemed panel today. We are joined by Dr. Dennis Mitchell. He needs no introduction, but he is the Executive Vice President for University Life. He's also the Senior Vice Provost for Faculty Advancement and the Professor of Dental Medicine at Columbia University Medical Center. We are also going to extend the conversation with Dr. Ryan Kwok. He is ADEA's immediate past chair of the board. He's a distinguished teaching professor at the University of Texas School of Dentistry at Houston. Thank you. Also, to further the conversation is Dr. Alvin Crawford, MD, Emeritus Professor at the University of Cincinnati. Dr. Crawford. And last but certainly not least, he is our friend and a part of our planning committee. Dr. Herminio Perez, he is the Assistant Dean of Student Affairs for Diversity and Inclusion at Rutgers School of Dental Medicine. Please welcome all of our panelists. We're going to jump right in. The goal of our planning committee, and also Dr. Kwok is a member of our planning committee, amongst others in the audience. Please wave your hand if you're a member of our committee, our planning committee today. Please wave your hand. Thank you, thank you. Wanted to recognize the fact that a lot of work has gone into today. And one of the goals, these questions we're going to engage our conversation in, was based on the questions from our actual committee. And we want to start and just tell a story. And so we're going to ask each panelist to take 2 minutes to tell us how the conversation today impacts their life as a man of color. Also, just give us a little bit of how your journey in healthcare has been impacted as a man of color. And we're going to start with Dr. Mitchell.
Well, thank you, Todd. And thank you for the invitation to be here. I was trying to avoid this, but I'm grateful that in the end, you and Sonia dragged me to the table. I'm going to say that, listen, I navigate the world as a 6'2" black man, right? Let's just, I walk into the room, I'm a 6'2" black man. And I'm aware that there are some circles that's actually a really good thing, but most it's not. It comes with preconceived notions. It comes with 400 years of stigma, at least in America. And it can be a real challenge. So wherever I go, I'm aware that those who are seeing me have an interpretation of who they think I am. From the moment I walk into the room, I don't get to sort of blend in. I have to be me. And that impacts everything, right? It impacts your choices. It impacts how you interact with people. It impacts how you have to enter the room at all times. I look at it as a blessing because it keeps me aware at all times. I don't have the blessings to be quiet about that, right? At all times I must be present because I don't get that option. But that has worked in my favor, and I think that many of you who've never thought about that, never thought about how you looked at, doesn't matter, it could be a 5'6" or a 6'6" black man. I never thought about how what they may have to do in order to interact with you. Think about it. Give us a break sometimes. We need it. We've heard today national crisis. We heard it from Dr. Pohl. We heard it from Dr. West. This is a national crisis. It may not be a crisis to you, but whether it's a crisis to you or not, it is one. And so I'm grateful to you, Todd. I know you're the brainchild, you and Sonia, behind putting this together. So I'm grateful to be able to start this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Dr. Quad, please.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell. Thank you, Dr. Esther. Well, I'm a 5'8" Asian man, and I think you're going to hear some common themes here, and you're probably wondering, what the heck is this Asian dude doing on the stage? And I wonder that myself. I know at the very minimum, I'm blessed to just see the strength and to know it and to be inspired by it. But I'll say that I think regularly about my place in the ecosystem. And as an Asian person, I'm often like the fly on the wall in the room. I have wept at hearing the private, silent indignations of brothers and sisters of color. And I've also heard the inadvertent unconscious biases coming out of people from majority populations. And so I'd like to maybe zoom out a little bit and try to take some things that have been said already to give you an idea of what it's like to be a hyphenated American. First, I want to establish that it's been my observation and my conviction that people of all backgrounds, our families and our parents, they generally want the biggest and best for us, okay? And they generally believe that education and that path is a golden path. I don't think there's any doubts about that. But I think that you're hearing this pattern that when you're a hyphenated person, there are automatically other layers of webbing in life that slow you down as you're trying to go forward. And for some folks, those layers are going to be different than others. So whatever category that society wants to put us in, there are things that it'll say that you're good in, you're going to be in this box, and we don't think that you're going to ever have a chance of being this. And it'll be different for you, for myself, for you, and for Arminio. And I've certainly experienced that in my own life. But I would say that my inspiration comes from seeing a lot of the folks in this room who have persisted despite those webbings of difficulty. I'd say that y'all are stubbornly awesome, but those are the exceptions, right? We need to have measures put in place to remove that webbing so that we're more on equal footing. And I tell you today that it's not equal. And telling people to pull themselves by the bootstraps in whatever arena that society has already decided that they are not qualified for, that's not good enough. And so I'll just share a quick anecdote for myself. So as presenting as an Asian male, there are certain stereotypes about me. And so you know who I am in this organization, and it's nothing, I'm not bragging about it, but in recent years, as I considered options for maybe doing something different in my career, important gatekeepers who are very decent human beings, but also subject to unconscious biases, told me that I don't think that you're the person to be leading people. I think that maybe you should be considering a position that is more sort of behind the scenes and working with numbers, which is kind of crazy because I was a liberal arts major. And I don't know if that's what I need to be doing, but those are some things that even that right there, whether it's overt or whether it's already built in quietly in the background, that chips away at your even confidence to be able to take that step forward. And see, when you see students or colleagues amongst you who are the only one of their kind, they don't even have the confidence often to even step forward to be part of those cohorts or mixing with the others. And we see that regularly. So I just want to say that there are a lot of things that go on that it's easy to be blind to, but I tell you right now that it is real, and that I want to work with you to make things better. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll next have Dr. Crawford, sir.
Well, it's such a pleasure to be here. Trust me, it's unusual, but I'm one of only one as an orthopedic surgeon being here. So I've been there before. I've been in a generation where you were told to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but not having boots. And I've had hyphenated and other non-hyphenated names of this time. But I think, oh my God, Dr. Krabrovsky, man, this has made I'm sorry, I love this organization, but he made my day. It was just so exciting to see. He said some things that needs to be said. I'm a music major. I majored in music. I went to HBCU. I went to Tennessee State University. I was in the Aristocrats of Band, the Marching 100 of Tennessee State. Now, people need to know, look, you can do whatever you want to do. I didn't find out until later that to take the MCAT, the MedCat, was that you need the prerequisites. You don't need a science degree. Follow your dreams. And God forbid, I was there when they were trying to find a new doctor. So rather than all science, they needed other mixtures. So because they would have been nerds today, but something else then, or geeks or whatever. And they wanted a fine arts person. And there I was, fine arts. And it was from that point, it was easy. And to know what he said in terms of not being accused of underproductivity, of being yourself, being identified, and being one of the group. I think there's so many messages. We need to go out and give them to all humans, not just black men, but black men at the lower level. One last thing. And this is recent statistics. We talked about statistics. The lowest income of a college graduate at 4 years is a biological science major. I'm saying, oh my God. You know, if you're a doctor at 4 years later, you're, as a resident, you're in pajamas all day. You go out with your friend who majored in IT or something else, or engineering or whatever, and he's in his BMW SUV and his wife's in a convertible, and you're in your car that still has either the lease or the mortgage from when you went in, and you owe zillions of dollars. But I think I've said enough. I think that we've got to talk.
Thank you, sir.
You've got to follow your dreams and go with the eponym that he gave you. It's just unbelievable. I'm so happy to be here.
We are so happy to have you. Thank you for the energy. Wow, a lot of excitement. Dr. Perez, sir.
Well, in my case, as a man of color, and on top of that, the layer being Hispanic, I see the impact in two ways. And both ways are going parallel. Number one, for me, is having or seeing, realizing the reality that sometimes we are being seen as we are not able to excel academically, or we are not able to excel professionally. And on the other side is the side of what are the hopes and rewards, right? And then when I'm saying that, it's, in my case, after dental school, working in an underserved area in the South Bronx with people that looks like you and like me, and people that at that time were having all the maladies in the society, from drug addiction, HIV, you name it. I found a mission in there because the people in there were looking for somebody to take care of them. Then eventually, the other part of the rewards and the hopes is like the other day at ADEA Dental, having the opportunity to talk to another generation of future dentists, right? And then empower them to follow this path. That's the way that I see how me being as a man of color and Hispanic has been basically traced my path in dentistry.
Thank you, sir. Coming to you first. So we're going to get started with a few questions. I want to start with Dr. Mitchell. Please tell us, what are the perceived barriers facing men of color going into oral medicine, going into health, going into dentistry, and how can we attract? You talked about being 6'2" and talking about what happens when we walk into the room. How can we attract more men of color to the oral health profession?
So two different questions. The barriers first, and then how can we attract? So barriers are, well, I started to talk about it, the misperceptions of who we are. There are some innate and some learned fears that our society has created for us. And I say created because that's exactly what it has been. It's a fabrication of who we are. And that becomes a challenge for us, one, when we're in these circles, well, first, we're not invited in, and then when we're in, how do we behave when we're in these circles, right? When you know the eyes are on you. So there are huge barriers, but it becomes systemic, right? We talked about, and it was interesting to hear President Krabrovsky talk about his thoughts on K-12. I was fascinated by his perspective on that. But the reality is that's when you begin to lock us out of opportunities, right? It starts right there, right? And in particular, thank you, by the way, I appreciate that. But in particular, the math and the sciences, which for our fields are critical, although I'm thrilled to hear about TSU music, though. That's a pretty good way. But in general, the majority of us, once we start having these 3rd, 4th grade math challenges, 5th grade, we're pretty much blocked out of these opportunities moving forward. So we underfund our communities, we underfund the opportunities for our young men and women, but in particular for the men, and they can't recover. So how do we attract them? I think we have to be attractive to them, right? Dr. Krabrovsky was a little, I'm one that believes in critical mass. I've spent my entire career at Columbia University, and I love Columbia University. It's been a place where I have flourished. But what you don't have is a critical mass of people who look like me, right? And whereas I went to dental school, and I say it over and over again, I'm a proud graduate of Howard University College of Dentistry, where we had a critical mass of people who looked like me, men who looked like me, who we partnered and worked and helped our way through the entire process. It was an entirely different experience when you're at home through your process. So I think we have to think about ways to create critical masses even in these majority white institutions, so that men who look like me feel like they can be at home.
Great, thank you, thank you. And that brings us to another point. Thank you, yes, thank you. For Dr. Perez, given the pandemic's impact on college admissions over the last 2 years, we've seen a decrease in college students at a very, very quickly fast pace. As a matter of fact, total undergraduate enrollment dropped 3.1% from the fall of 2020 to the fall of 2021, bringing the total decline since the fall of 2019 to 6.6% less, or 205,000 students. Given what those issues and that data, what do you think will ultimately see an impact, the greatest impact within the next few years? What changes could we do, can institutions make to inspire men of color to apply to the health professions? How can we change our pedagogy?
I think that we need to start with creating that awareness. I think that we need to have more deans in this type of conversations and make them aware about what are the needs of men of colors. I think that if you start in there, creating that awareness, and then probably trying to find out the intentionality, develop that intentionality, right? And move it up to trying to find partnerships and programming. It has to be like a whole entire line, but we need to start having that awareness in our institution, having that more of that conversation with the leadership of our institution, with the deans of our schools, all of those people that have the power to, in reality, to make those changes. We can be the leverage. We can be the people that we're going to be talking about, but they are the ones that have the key. And I think that if they have that intentions to make that change, is going to be possible. Let's going to think about awareness. Let's going to think about intentionality, accountability, partnership, and also programming, because those are those two last elements in that line are important too. But let's going to start first creating that awareness in the need, what is the need of the men of color? What is the reality of the men of color in healthcare?
Thank you, thank you. And that brings us to a very key point, which is mentorship.
Yes.
We know the ability to be able to see ourselves. Representation, you know, Dr. Mitchell's talking about critical mass, and representation plays a significant role in our ability to see what we can become. And so with that in mind, I'm going to start with Dr. Kwok and then ask Dr. Crawford to follow up. Tell us how mentorship has played a role in your journey as a man of color.
Yeah, I never imagined that I would be doing any of this. I knew that I wanted to be a dental educator, but I think that my father in this profession is Dr. Jarvis Chan, DDS PhD, Professor Emeritus at our school, formerly an NIH-funded fluoride researcher at Houston. From day one, and this is interview day at Houston, I wanted to go to UT Houston. He looked at he was my interviewer, and he looked at my transcript and said, you haven't taken enough science classes because you're a liberal arts major. You also have some pretty suspect grades, but I'm going to write you a good recommendation anyway. And from that day on, he sort of kept his eyes on me. And, you know, he took me under his wing when I joined faculty. He told me, and in many of our cultures, we do not call elders by their first name. But he insisted, the moment I graduated, do not call me Dr. Chan anymore, call me Jarvis. And so in that empowerment, he taught me how to do research and all these sort of things. His mentorship, I think, is really key in the way that I've learned to mentor others. It is selfless mentorship. I'm not looking to ever gain anything from my mentees. You know, I want them to get first authorship and any of the prestige from anything that they do. And that's trickled down to me. But I don't want to talk about myself. I want to actually talk about his journey, because I think it brings it back home. Dr. Jarvis Chan graduated at the top of his class in chemistry from the Chinese University of Hong Kong in the late 60s. He applied to a whole bunch of grad programs in the United States. The only program that took a chance on this man was the Tuskegee Institute, okay? So thank you, Tuskegee. He had a 73 out of 100 GPA, but he was top of his class. Tuskegee saw the quality that was not in the numbers. And he came over and he became very successful. So I declare to you that I owe my professional identity to an HBCU. So I thank you. Thank you so much. And I think we got to realize that's a case for holistic admissions and for looking beyond just the numbers. So I think that's really.
Thank you. Our HBCUs close the parity gaps, for sure, in all higher education. Dr. Crawford, please, could you share also about how has mentorship played a role for you in your path?
Mentorship is unbelievable. It has been and will continue. It's important to define mentor. Where does mentor come from? Well, mentor, it goes back to Greek. The Greeks would say everything started in Greek. But anyway, I won't go into that. But anyway, Odyssey, in Homer's Odyssey, as he was getting ready to go into battle, he needed someone to take care of his son. And the person who could take care of him, whether he lived or died through the battle and come back, name was mentor. And so mentor is that person who protects, who guides you, who leads you when there's nothing else there. And that's what you want to say. So I think, first of all, the old saying, you can't be what you can't see. So if kids could see all the people in this room and know that they can be that, then it would be unbelievable. And HBCUs, it's interesting. again, Tennessee State, which I dearly love, but my God, I think I was maybe number 9 in my class of high school. Got lucky at Tennessee State was number 1. I went to the University of Tennessee. At that time, there had never been blacks in the Southern medical schools. I went there, and the dean said, son, if my daddy, God bless his soul, knew that I was even talking to you about this, he turned over in his grave. I said, boy, this is going to be interesting. But anyway, went from there and ended up, it's all Tennessee State, but ended up at the top of my class. Went to, did my residency at Harvard, was Outstanding Resident Award, taught there, and have been at the University of Cincinnati for a number of years. And getting back to the answer of this question, we have started 2 years ago a BMIMC, which is Black Men in Medicine Cincinnati, where we are interested in assisting in recruiting, but sustaining and graduating African-American males. It is a critical situation. Dr. Knowles said that earlier, and it is that, and the numbers speak for themselves. And data, Dr. Dombrowski, you've got to have data, and the data is there. It's there. The NMA and the AAMC put together a program of accountability to see that this was done, and they've yet to complete that, and I salute that for them. And so go out into the community. Get people who look like you to know when they're down in that level that they can be like you. It's a matter, but it is going to take industry. It is going to take a lot, and you've got to be worried about it. And when I say worried about it, what I'm so worried about is maybe being paranoid. In the words of the inimitable Richard Gregory, otherwise known as Dick Gregory, the comedian, he said that and he probably used the N-word of some other thing, who is not paranoid in this life in the United States is crazy. And so with that, to go from that and sort of the thing of maintaining your self-esteem, but it's people like up here and out there that have to give these young people self-esteem. Give them self-esteem to know that they can do it, you did it, anyone can do it if they would put themselves into the situation. And putting themselves in the situation requires a lot of things, and we heard them all from Dr. Krabrovsky today. But I'm happy to be here. Those are my things. Oh, three things that are really, really, really interesting. Sure. And that is academic progression that you have to do. It's not innate, but they'll know it. The other is funding. Funding is a very important part of this. And then after that, show them that you can be what you do see.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, and I just remind myself of just the love that comes from mentorship as a teacher and a friend. And as those relationships, and many of my mentors are actually here, either on the panel or out in the audience. But I tell you, it's just amazing to see that you can become not only a dentist, but a dental educator, and then understand the power of giving that back. And so as we get to work with students now and hear how they see us and hold us in high regard, it's really being their friend and at their level, right? Because I always say to as soon as they come in, you're a student doctor, you're a student dentist. And that elevation for them, many times, just sometimes on the worst day, can lift them up. So thank you for sharing the importance of that. Last question, we want to go over to Dr. Perez. We're going to open it up for you also to ask this esteemed panel questions as well. But we also heard a lot about the K-12 pathway and programs, local communities. I know you've done some phenomenal work in Rutgers and reaching out to communities and bringing students into the dental program, into programs in K-12. Can you just highlight for us, give us an example of something that demonstrates the impact that work reaching out to K-12 or P-12 makes?
Well, first I would like to say that all the efforts at Rutgers School of Dental Medicine in that area as being directed and spearheaded by Dr. Rosa Chaviano Moran, that is over there, and also by Dr. Kim Fennessy, that also is over there. And I have to say that because in reality, I'm just a little piece in the whole entire game, you know. But what I have to say is that it brings that representation. It brings. Tell them, it's like you were saying, you cannot be what you cannot see. And then the fact that we are having those programs in there at our school, that we are showing them that they can make it, that makes a big difference. That makes a big difference, builds the confidence, and also builds the actual sense of belonging. I have to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. So we heard a lot about partnerships. I think in the room, we set a vision for doing something about the parity gap for people of color, in particular men of color specifically. We've heard that funds are going to be made available to different organizations who are already supporting today's work, and we're so thankful to our sponsors today and those who are looking to also sponsor. But what out-of-the-box thought do we have, right? What can we do to make a significant impact on men of color, the theme of today's session, going into dentistry? And so I'm going to pitch this to Dr. Mitchell. When we think about how can we increase men of color, it's clear that in 2019, 30% of the African-American graduates in 2019 graduated from our two historically black dental schools, Howard and Meharry, and our friends are here in the audience. Thank you for all you do for this topic, Howard and Meharry. But is there also an option, a thought, about another historically black dental school that can focus on MSIs, that could focus on research, can reach out to the P through 12 spectrum? What impact could that have? Could you share, please?
So this is going to be a little controversial, but it's time for to get in some good trouble. You know, I think we've heard this national crisis said many times. Listen, it's too bright out there, so I can't see where he is, but I saw Kaz earlier, so I know Caswell Evans is in this audience.
Right here.
There he is. So, and he could have used the word national crisis in 2000, right, when you looked at the oral health report that came out of the Surgeon General's office then. And here we are. If any of you have read the recent one, nada. Right? No progress. We haven't really done a thing. So I think we have failed. I would say that dental education has failed definitely in terms of its reaching out to and educating people of color in general, but black men for sure. We can't even talk about indigenous populations. Lord have mercy. It's really problematic. So. But who hasn't failed? We've got well over a century of these two HBCU universities with dental schools educating black men, well over a century of success in this field. So when you're failing, as dental education is, and by the way, there once was a time where those two schools produced over 85% of black dentists in the United States. And it wasn't 100 years ago, in my lifetime, right? So if we're failing, but we see a model that's succeeding somewhere, why wouldn't we double down on that in terms of times of crisis? And I'm not saying that the rest of us shouldn't continue to push, but we've been saying we've been pushing for a couple of decades now, and we've failed. So continue to push we must, but let's take a look at what Howard and Meharry are doing. And let's see if places like Morehouse, where there's an undergraduate HBCU full of black men, and a medical school that has successfully created black men and women physicians, why wouldn't we take a look at what they may or may not be able to do? We're producing dental schools in the last decade. How many dental schools have we created all over this nation? Why hasn't this national crisis thought about Morehouse as a place for a dental school? If I was going to create one and I knew we had a nice national crisis at hand, that I would look at Morehouse Medical College and align with that. So that's my good trouble for the day.
Thank you for the good trouble. Do any of our other panelists want to comment on an out-of-the-box thought as it relates to
my comment about being paranoid is to being a positive motivation, to never feel that you've done all that you can do and enough. And that's what I'm saying. And it's most important because as much as has been done, there's more miles to go. There's more to be done. And to know that you can see people who've done it and then do it with a joy. Failure is important. Failure may be one of the most important aspects of life. If you always win, then it doesn't really mean anything. But failure, the ability to continue to strive to succeed, and it ain't never good enough. Keep on going and keep on doing, and make people like those that are here in this audience.
Thank you so much. Let's give our panel a big round of applause. We are going to continue the conversation. As mentioned, we have other voices for you to hear as we wrap up. We actually have Morehouse, the Director of Health Professions from Morehouse College. We have a current senior student at Morehouse College who's going to share with us on the theme of how we can do more for men of color coming into the health professions, and a program manager for Morehouse. So they're going to join us in a few minutes. I think we have time, Dr. Contreras, for about, do you want to have questions or a 5-minute break?
Let's do about maybe 3 questions.
Okay, so we have time for 3 questions.
Okay. Dr. Evans.
Gentlemen, a fabulous panel. I want to follow up on a comment that Dennis made in terms of trouble. I think about the systems that we have in play that are failing us. In a work that my good friend and colleague Patrick Smith has undertaken for publication, and a work that I'm engaged with Alan Formicola, we're looking at CODA. We celebrated the diversity standard in CODA about 16 years ago. We were very pleased that that standard was put in place. No dental school has been held accountable for failure to meet the diversity standard. You've got a situation where if you've got some students wearing black socks, which I have on now, some wearing blue socks and some wearing red socks, you're diverse. We knew what that standard was supposed to represent back then. A ham sandwich can now pass the diversity standard. We need to hold CODA accountable, because we know the schools that are out there that have no color in them, haven't had color in them, and are probably not going to have. We need to hold CODA accountable and say, why is this? Show us the information that enables these schools to not be held accountable for these standards.
Thank you. Thank you. Another question.
Thank you very much. This is Ahmad. I'm from Detroit Mercy. I'm Iranian by origin. I would like to thank Dr. Sonia Smith and President West and Todd Esther for putting this nice program together. This is one of the first programs I see the panelists take their guts out and say what they really felt. And I admire you.
Kudos, gentlemen.
I'm going to cut the chase here. It resonates with me, especially with Ryan told me, that brought up to our attention, that, you know, sometimes we have a combination of implicit bias combined with your maybe accent, maybe the way you come across, or you don't have this dietary restriction, and we put people in their square that you should be just doing this. You should be doing only clinical. You should be doing only research, because we are casting people across the boundary of their ethnicity that has roots into implicit bias. So I was just gonna, that really resonate with me, and I was just gonna bring it up to you and acknowledge that. And sometimes we do that, we do in our background. We put people into their square and circle. You should stay in the clinic. You shouldn't go to the leadership. Oh no, I don't think you are ready. These are the negative statements that we hear. And I leave it like that, and I appreciate what you have done today. I'm glad I came to Philadelphia, at least for this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. And we are seeing how implicit and unconscious bias at our dental schools is really helping our students, our staff, and our faculty create a more inclusive community. And so in the state of Michigan and many other states now, implicit bias is going to be required for all healthcare providers starting in Michigan, June of 2022. So again, when you have opportunities for implicit and unconscious bias at your schools, it makes a big difference for our students, our staff, and our faculty. Sure, so thank you for bringing that up.
We break for 5 minutes, and we'll be back at 3:20. Yeah, 3:20, so that we could set the next panel.
3:20, please make sure you stay. And there is a reception at the end. So thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, everyone. I just want to say that I have been inspired so much by the conversations and dialogues that we've been having today. So thank you very much for the conversations. And Dr. Esther, I will pass on it to you for the next panel.
Thank you so much, Dr. Contreras. Again, the energy and the excitement in the room is palpable, so thank you all for what you're engaging in today. I am joined by esteemed colleagues on the panel. This segment is going to be a working session, our hope is to engage you using polling. So we will have a Slido polling efforts that will come up in just the next slide in just a moment. But let me introduce to you these amazing people who are joining us, who are also working to increase men of color in the health professions. We are joined by the Director of Health Professions at the Morehouse College, Ajit Samarasinghe. Hello. We are also joined by the Program Manager of the Office of Health Professions, Ms. Esther Lee.
Hello.
And we are also joined by a fourth-year senior student at Morehouse College going into dental school, Mr. Jordan DeVoe. And you will be the star of the show, sir. And so here's your opportunity to engage. If you have your phones, please take them out for the QR code. It will take you right into the polling question, or you can go to slido.com and you'll open up a web browser and put in hashtag ADEA MOC 22. So you can take out your phones, take out the camera, and just use the QR code. It should load up for you the actual Slido polling. Or if you like to open up a browser on your device, tablet or phone, you can open up a browser and put Google or what have you, and put in hashtag ADEA MOC 22. And if you blame anyone for this technology step, blame Dr. Sonia Smith. She's taking us into the next century. So our first question to engage you, is the recruitment of men of color into the health professions a priority at your dental, medical, school, or organization? Again, is the recruitment of men of color into the health professions a priority at your dental, medical school, or organization? And you should be seeing that. Here's again the QR code and the directions on this slide. As you start to answer, we will see your, there they go. They're coming in fast. You see them? I see them. I need my glasses. 73% say yes, 70% yes, no, 31%. Again, the question, is the recruitment of men of color into the health professions a priority at your dental medical school or organization? Oh, this is great. So right now, we're looking at 69% say yes, it is a priority. 29% say no. 28%. So we're right around roughly in that range. Let's go forward, because you'll have more opportunities to use Slido. So keep your browsers open, and we're going to have some fun. Today, we stand on the shoulders of those who sacrificed and paved the way for us. We all recognize this is not the first time ADEA, our mentors, ourselves, our organizations have thought there was a need to talk about men of color. But today, with this chair of the board, Dean Keith Mays, with this president of ADEA, Dr. West, and our Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Smith, today is the day for a symposium on men of color. Now, that's not leaving out the sisters, no way, no way, no way, no way. But it is amplifying opportunities for all of us because we're shining a light, finally, as Dr. Krabrovsky said, being specific and intentional about a metric, an actual data point that's been overlooked for far too long. So as we stand on those shoulders and we lift them up, feel free to call out, if you will, for just 2 seconds, a couple of mentors, a couple of people in your spaces who have worked on increasing men of color in the health professions. Just call out their names and bring them into the room with us. Just call out a few names. Thank you. Just call them out. Dr. Lee Jones. Dr. McCauley. Call them out. Yes. Dr. Gene Sinkford. Call them out. Yes. Dr. Leo Rouse. Yes. And there's many, many, many more. But these are the shoulders on which we stand. A little data. So you already heard Dr. West, and I think tomorrow there is a presentation on this phenomenal report that ADEA has put out on HERE, underrepresentation, slow to change, HERE groups in dental education. But here's a few of our data tables that we just should cover. In 2019, only 2.8% of active male dentists are African American, based on the report. In 2019, only 4.1% of male predoctoral graduates are African American. Just take that in. And you also see the representative numbers of male dentists for Latino dentists, as well as for Native American at 0.1%, and for Latino, 4.4%. This table shows, in the same report, the number of male dental school graduates in the United States from 2011 to 2019. In 2011, we had 262 HERE male graduates. This is putting all of the groups together. In 2019, 363. So again, we're getting a chance to see just what we're talking about when we look at the data, the actual numbers of actual HERE graduates in our programs. In 2019, 312 African American dentists graduated dental school. That means that was 127 of them were male and 185 were female when we look at our African American graduates. But a similar trend follows for Latino and Native American, that they are outnumbered, the male in those groups are outnumbered by the females. Did you know that for African Americans, female graduates have outnumbered male dental graduates since the early 1990s? Did you know that? All right. But for our white counterparts, it was just 2015, 2016, 2017. So you can see why we could almost bury some of this data and not shine the light that we're shining on it today. If we look at parity, these issues were brought up in the Surgeon General's report, and we are fortunate to have Dr. Evans here today, who was the writer and the lead in that report in 2000. Ethnic and racial diversity among dentists does not mirror the U.S. population. You can see, if we look at 3.8% in 2020, 3.8% black dentists, we're 12.4% of society. For Latino Hispanic, we can see 5.9%, 18.4% of the society. And for Native American, which are not on this chart, and thank you for pointing that out, Dr. Collins, less than 1%. 0.4% is the actual number, Dr. Collins, for Native American. So in 2019, we would need, if we look at the parity gap, and this is a phenomenal chart that shows, if we look at the parity gap, in 2019, we would need an additional 18,000 African American dentists to close the parity gap. What they also trace for us here in the bar graph is what that means, how many dental classes will we need to equal that gap. So in 2019, for African Americans, you would need 58 additional graduating classes to close that gap in 2019. For Native American, you need 37 additional to close the parity gap. And for Latino, additional 49 classes to close the parity gap. We've got work to do. We understand, and it was brought up again in Missing Persons by Dr. Sullivan's commission, as well as in our Surgeon General's report, as they talked about dental health profession shortage areas. We understand that our underrepresented dental graduates, many of them go out where? Back to home communities that are many times are our underrepresented areas. We see how they are closing those gaps. Shouldn't tuition reimbursement equal that for them? Shouldn't the burden of what they take out for loans going to dental school make it easier for them when they go into communities that may sometimes the parity in even income changes? But you can see here in this chart, 6,579 dental HIPSAs in 2020. So the problem is paramount. We've already mentioned the Southern Commission report, missing persons, and the need, where they called up for the need for more people of color going into the health professions. So after hearing the data from all of our presenters, our panelists, from all of our speakers and our leaders, should the recruitment of men of color into the health professions be a priority at your dental or medical school? We already saw the data. 70% said yes, it already is. Roughly 30% said, I'm not sure. After hearing the presentations today, should the recruitment of men of color into the health professions be a priority at your medical or dental school? Pull out your devices again, please, and let us see what your responses are. Dr. West, 100%? 100%. So just see how quickly that changes with a different word, should or is. I want to share with you a little bit of a story around what we're doing at the University of Michigan. One of the goals we were asked to just share some best practices that are taking place, and many of these efforts, of course, are taking place across the spectrum of our dental schools. But I want to point out in this slide that we have a Native American in this slide from the Navajo tribe. We have Howard graduates in this slide. We have Oakwood graduates in this slide. We have many Michigan graduates in this slide. We have diversity phenotypically and diversity you can't even see. And that is what we feel our vision should really be, building a dental workforce for the entire country. How have we gotten there? It's been culture and history that has brought us to this space. These are some of our esteemed alumni and our leadership team from our school. But you're seeing on this picture Dr. Ray Gist, who was the first African-American president of the American Dental Association. During his presidency, he and the NDA president at the time, another alum, Dr. Sheila Brown, they wrote the letter of apology to the African-American community and the National Dental Association that said for all those years that African-Americans could not join the ADA. And do you know that was 1965? When dentists and African-Americans, when the roadblocks were taken out of this way to allow our membership, full membership in the ADA. So when we talk about the power that our graduates who are here make, leadership is an amazing opportunity and a testament to what happens. In the middle of this slide, you see Dr. Jessica Rickard. She will be receiving a Geis Award tomorrow during the celebration of the Geis awardees, and congratulations to all the other Geis awardees in the room. She's the first Native American from a tribe to graduate at U.S. Dental School. And when you ask, what year did that take place, Dr. Esther? It was 1975. 1975. The other interesting fact is our first African-American or black female dentist to graduate at dental school graduated in 1890. 1890, Dr. Ida Gray. But our second black female to graduate at our dental school was in 1975. So it's just interesting to see what we don't do when we don't shine a light on these issues. In the upper slide, you must understand, this is our leadership team. Dr. Noor, who presented earlier, is also in this picture. But we were at downtown Detroit. It was the same night, the Queen of Soul. I'm from Detroit, if you guys didn't know that already. The Queen of Soul is being laid out at the African American Museum of History. I thought I would slip away from our dinner that we had at the historic Whitney to go to view and pay my respects to the Queen of Soul, Miss Aretha Franklin. When I told some of the leadership team that's what I was planning to do, this group decided they were going to join me. And so we shared stories, and we talked about what Miss Franklin meant to all of us. And so we talk about leadership that is poised for change, like you all in this room are. That's how we can really make a big difference. Another best practice, we've had 49 years of continual diversity officer, and if we call it the phrase back in 1973 when Dr. Jones brought the Office of Minority Affairs to the school, we've had a 49-year history of a Chief Diversity Officer. Dr. Kenneth May is here in the room somewhere. He served as that role as well. And I will tell you the power of having an office fully resourced to do recruitment, but also doing climate studies. We have hosted 3 different climate studies at our school since 1994. These have been the practices that have made the difference. But also, don't miss on this slide that over 6 deans sustain this office, fully funded office, fully reporting to the dean, able to do recruitment throughout the nation to historically Black colleges, minority-serving institutions. That's leadership, and I'm thankful to all of those deans who have served in that capacity. We've also been able to integrate the work through our efforts, through our summer program efforts, through holistic admissions efforts, and alumni giving. There are 2 funds named for Dr. Lee Jones. We call him the Godfather, but he was the one who created the Office of Minority Affairs. And now those funds, our alumni, are able to support us in ways that go unparalleled. So alumni in the room of your various schools, I know you're already doing it, but that's one strategy that really works. Also on this slide, you see a few dear friends, Dr. Woolfolk, Dr. Carolyn Murdoch-Kinch, and our dean, and many amazing students who are now out leading in the spaces. So when we look at the here graduates from our school from Michigan from 1890, again, from Dr. Gray's time all the way to 2021, we have graduated over 468 African-American dentists, 178 Latinx dentists, 22 Native American dentists. You can see, though, and you look at the representation, male to female, you can see where that falls for each group. But I also like to point you to the fact of the leadership. By having these same students, many of them stay on for specialty programs or partnerships with Meharry and Howard, students who came and received their specialty degrees at Michigan and went back to those schools. These partnerships really create opportunities that open doors for here underrepresented students at all levels. And so you can see we had 70 African Americans graduate our specialty programs, and the following numbers there for Latinx, 51, and 3 for Native Americans. I'm going to skip this slide on Profile for Success because there's informational in your actual folder, but I want to get to our friends who are here with us today. And so because of these efforts, we've seen a 3-fold increase in diverse students of color. This is a class of 2016, but you can see just how our community celebrates diversity in a way that is just loving. This is the Student National Dental Association's King's Feast, started by Dr. Sheila Brown in 1983, and we have gone for almost 50 years now in celebration. And so we said it earlier, the partnerships that we've been able to have with our Office of Diversity, Minority Affairs, Multicultural Affairs, with our HBCUs, with our Native American communities, as well as with Latino minority-serving institutions, has been profound. And today we want to share with you an example of one of those partnerships that we have with Morehouse College. It's clear that HBCUs close the parity gap. And so throughout Morehouse College's existence, Morehouse has a liberal arts college founded in 1867, has produced over 500 dentists and over 1,200 physicians. And we will now hear from the Director of Office of Health Professions from Morehouse to share more about the work they do to increase men of color in the health professions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Esther. My name is Ajit Samrasingh. I direct the Office of Health Professions at Morehouse College. And I want to first of all thank ADEA for this wonderful event. It's just remarkable. The power that I feel in this room here is extraordinary, and it's very encouraging. I just want to take a couple of minutes, and I'm hoping that I don't run over, but there's so much that I'd like to say about developing young Black men for health professions. I want to throw a couple of ideas at you, and one of the things that I'd like you to really think about is the fact that when you look at Black men in general, let's talk education, less than 52% of Black men actually graduate with a high school diploma, okay? Out of the 1.2 million that drop out, half of that number are Hispanics and African Americans. I mean, African American Black men, no, African Americans, period. Hispanics and African Americans. So the point I'm trying to drive home is, you know, this whole educational piece begins so far earlier. You go back and you think about the conversation and the ideas concerning, you know, beginning, you know, at the elementary and the middle schools. This is all very important. One of the things I would like to say is Morehouse does recognize this. We cannot go and reinvent education in the elementary and the middle schools, but the importance of us being able to pipeline with our high schools is sort of like very important. One of the things, and I'm just talking now about best practices. In fact, one of the questions I had for Dr. Krabrovsky, but I missed him, was funding. I mean, I know that money is not everything, but it sure makes some of the things that you have to do much easier to accomplish. One of the big questions I had, and then he said to me, or he mentioned needing funds himself, and if he had the resources, the kind of things that he could do. My question was, when it comes to presidents of universities, dental schools, and so on, where are we as we advocate for resources? And when I say resources, I'm talking about the undergraduate level. Now, you may know this, you may not, but back in the 70s and 80s, there was the HCOP grant, Health Careers Opportunity Program grant, which played a very vital role in supporting students, minority students, particularly HBCUs had a big chunk of those funds coming their way. And if you look back, I call these the glory years. When I say glory years, 70s and 80s, I graduated from Morehouse in 1982. That was a phenomenal year. 18 students went to dental school that year. Now, fast forward to today, we're doing less than half a dozen heading off into dental school. And that is a disaster, in my opinion. So my real question is, where are we as we lobby the federal government for resources? It seems like we went to war, the Gulf War and so on, and resources were redirected for other efforts. God bless the United States. But the fact is, our health career programs suffered tremendously. So in all fairness, there are HCOP grants still currently in play, but they're going primarily to medical and dental schools, with the idea that, undergrad programs like the ones at Morehouse, Spelman, Tennessee, and so on, would pipeline in. One of the terrible things that, I've come to realize is, as these funds get to these professional schools, the trickling down doesn't happen. Okay, it does not happen, and as such, in fact, in some instances, there's an element of trying to duplicate what we are actually doing at the undergraduate level. We don't have the answer to everything, but we do have practices that do work, and I did want to share a few of them with you with a little bit of time that I may still have. So one of the things that I think is crucial, again, are summer programs. So what my office does, and I do work with Ms. Esther Lee, and she's our program manager, you'll hear from her shortly, but what we try to do is identify students, okay, who are coming to Morehouse, and prior to them coming, they spend 6 weeks, so these are incoming freshmen, they spend 6 weeks with us in a special blocker summer science program, and it has 2 different curricula. One of them, which was what the program was set up to do, was to take those unique, strong students and push them, let them push the envelope as far as they possibly could. But the second curriculum was primarily targeted towards these students that we identify that may have had some difficulty in high school, need to brush up on their sciences and so on. And quite frankly, this program had a very, very major impact. So having said that, if I had resources, I'd be working towards beginning this even earlier. We can't go all the way to the elementary school, but I believe if we had rising 10th graders, and we could bring them to Morehouse for 2 summers, even if they didn't come to Morehouse as a pre-med or pre-dental, pre-health profession student, they could go elsewhere and really thrive because, the intensity of, what we offer during the summers are really second to none. So that has been one of our really secret weapons that has worked. 40% of the students that come through our pre-freshman summer program actually do end up in health professional school. So that is something else that I did want to bring to your attention. The other piece is, as it's been mentioned before, it's leadership. The leadership of our institutions really should, if they're supportive of developing young black men in the health professions. I have a problem when I read strategic plans and there's no mention of that. Okay, there's something actually wrong with that. What is also important, again, I'm just talking off my head, talking best practices. Every dental school or medical school that's serious about young black men should actually have somebody there in the form of either a faculty person, an administrator, somebody there that they can relate to. Okay, I think Dr. Esther, one of the wonderful things about Michigan is, and we've had such a great relationship. Many of our students have gone on to Michigan, but they feel at home. So someone you can talk to, but what's even more important than that? We have to learn to show them how much we really care. It's that caring piece, that mentoring piece. It's all tied in there. I'm getting phone calls right now. I just got one. One of our students got accepted to Georgetown, and I didn't read the other school, but we are in touch with our students. Our students have my personal phone number. They call me at all ridiculous hours, and it's sometimes simply saying, hey, let me, I'm tied up doing A, B, and C, but let me get back with you, and I do. When you promise them, you make sure you do that. There's another secret weapon I want to bring up that I'm going to hold on to because I think Ms. Esther needs to get in here.
Just cover this slide.
So that slide is excellent. So there are, I guess, some promising pieces of information, statistics here I see, and I'm familiar with this. So over the last 3 years, Morehouse College has put more black men into medical school than any other HBCU in the country. And we are actually tied nationwide with UNC Chapel Hill. And that's, with all the heavy-duty, big, powerful universities. We're tied second with UNC Chapel Hill. The #1 producer of black men that go on to medical school is the University of Maryland, College Park.
Awesome.
And I think Dr. Krabrovsky made mention of that too.
Thank you, and I think the point you made to the campus was the fact that that number was 40. If you didn't see the number, it was 40. And so there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that regard. We're going to now hear from Program Manager, Ms. Esther Lee. We've had a chance to engage students on campus. She's going to share with you some of her strategies that work in health professions advising.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for having me here. My name is Esther Lee, and I would like to say that I am a Native American born and raised on the Shinnecock Indian Reservation in Southampton, Long Island. So I'm actually really excited to know that there was Dr. Collins. Congratulations to him. So a little bit about our program. I'm excited because Dr. Todd Esther, we were working on this program for about 6 months, I believe. And we actually pulled it off. It was a really great program, the Office of Health Professions. What we do is we provide opportunities for our students to get involved and to know their resources. We make sure that they are getting the information that they need right away. So when the first day that they come in to our college, we make sure that they know who we are, where we're located, and we can continue to engage with them. Dr. Sam, he also is a big factor in the fact that he does advisements for them. We make sure that they are connected to him. And with this program, the Office of Health Professions, we had a oral health symposium, and we engaged with the students. Jordan DeVoe, who is one of our star pre-dents, and is going to be going, and he's the president of our pre-dent society. He's going to be going on to college, going on. I'm sorry, I'm a little nervous, so
take your time.
I'm going to take my time here. I apologize for that, but it's just rewarding to see that we can do the work and provide opportunities for our students, and they can make it. But we can't make it without others. We need the resources, like Michigan coming in, Dr. Todd Esther coming in, and spending 4 days with us and our students. We provided, on the first day, we partnered with our biology department and faculty who have a seminar for the seniors, and Dr. Kegler was able to come in, DDS and PhD, and speak to a wider range of students. And after that, we had activities during the day in our cafeteria. We had the students' involvement, and it was a very, very exciting time for them. And during that time, we actually found that there was about 5 or 6 students who we didn't identify that wanted to be a dentist. So that was a great opportunity. And at the end, we had a panel discussion with all our alums, which came in to, it was a hybrid kind of situation. Some of the students that were able to attend in person, which was our first time after the pandemic of us getting together. And then we had maybe about seven alums who phoned in virtually and engaged with the students, which is very critical. Now that is one part of, I believe, the secret to how we have been able to engage our students is the alumni support. We have a great amount of alumni support in the Thomas J. Blocker pre-freshman summer science program that Mr. Samerson just spoke about is really critical. During that time, we have 6 weeks to engage with the students, and every Thursday we have a professional seminar series where we have speakers come in and speak to our students, and these are alums. The alums are very dedicated, not only with their time, but financial support, fundraising activities throughout the year. We align with our partners, the AC partners with Clark and Spelman. We have an annual health professional recruitment fair, and during this recruitment fair, we engage with the students. We provide them with opportunities to meet other health professional schools and have one-on-one interview sessions. We have workshops to how to apply to dental school, medical school, and so on. And this goes on throughout the year. So we're excited because we have a student who has spent his time. He was the only one for at least a year and a half, and then there was 2. And then when Dr. Todd asked us, about doing this symposium, we called on Jordan, and Jordan came through, and now we have, about 15 or 16 dental students. So.
Yeah, so thank you. Thank you so much. And one of the points that we hope you all are engaged in is the fact that these opportunities are available to all of us, ways to partner with Office of Health Professions at the various schools. And many of you already do it. You do it through your organizations, but just again, they're looking for ways to amplify. And so, of course, Morehouse is a great place to do that. Now we'll hear from our incoming dental student, Jordan DeVoe. He's going to share with us some of his thoughts and strategies on how we can increase men of color going into the health professions, and specifically dentistry. Jordan.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Jordan DeVoe, and I'm a senior biology major from Shelby, North Carolina. But some of my thoughts, I guess, and opinions on trying to increase men of color in dentistry is just community. I feel like that plays a big part in everything. So making sure you have like the right networking and the right community to bring people in and to make it accessible to everyone. As well, I think another factor that plays a role is competitiveness. I feel like a lot of students, they feel like it's such a competitive game to get into health profession school, where it's this nature to kind of turn you off from wanting to even apply or wanting to go to school because you feel like you might not even get the chance to. So I think that's another role that plays a significant role in increasing people that look like me, people or men of color, to want to apply to dental school or health professions in that matter. I think also just staying engaged, keeping engagement with certain schools. Like the University of Michigan, since my freshman year, they came down to campus, so I was able to keep a great relationship with Dr. Esther and the University of Michigan. So just keeping steady and constant relationships with the different partnering schools who are interested in wanting to dedicate their time to come to our school and take time out their day to try to come and help us and recruit.
Thank you, Jordan. Jordan was a member in our, thank you, sir. Jordan last summer was a participant in our Profile for Success program, and so he and another young lady from South Carolina just totally led through that program. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for your leadership on the campus as well. So again, as we talk about HBCUs Close the Gap, we mentioned already 70% of African-American physicians and dentists earn their degrees at HBCUs, and those could be undergraduate degrees, but also in 2019, approximately 30% of African-American DDS graduates were from HBCU dental schools, Howard and Meharry, and we can't shout them out enough for all that they do in this regard. And so it is true that HBCUs close the gaps. These quotes from President of Howard, Dr. Wayne Frederick, who would have been here, and I got to give a shout out to Dr. Mitchell for filling in for Dr. Frederick today. Thank you so much, sir. The role that HBCUs play both as a pathway and as a training opportunity for physicians in this country is absolutely critical, he says. And this was in an article about the Flexner Report. And some of you are familiar with the Flexner Report in the early 1900s that closed many of the black medical schools. At that time, there were over 7 black medical schools, but then only 2 remained after the Flexner's report. So that's a great report to take a look at, and just ultimately give us a pathway for some of the work that we may do in this regard. But also, Dr. Sullivan, having diversity in the healthcare profession is critical, and we know that he has written and dedicated his life to this work and his leadership, and we're so thankful. And so that brings us to a slide that Dr. Director Samarasinghe wanted to highlight, the importance of the leadership of alumni. I'm an alumni of Morehouse, I'm an alumni of Michigan, and the ability to come back and support these schools, for me, this is my calling, my passion work, working to increase men of color in dentistry. So I'm honored to be able to serve in this capacity today. But Mr. Samarasinghe has also been sharing this information to the leadership at Morehouse to further inculcate the importance of alumni support and roles. Do you want to share more about that, sir?
Yeah. So again, I said the secret sauce or the secret weapon. Ms. Esther Lee had already brought this up, but that's it right there. When we talk about legacy of leadership at Morehouse College, so every one of these physicians, and this is maybe 20% of the physicians that are engaging us. When I say engaging, I mean I know each one of these young men by first name. And the point I'm trying to drive home is when you have if you have the potential of building a relationship with your alumni. I think that is just so phenomenal. What do these guys do? They give of their resources, their treasure. They give of their time. Dr. Vandy Gaffney, they've created an organization called the Thomas J. Blocker Society of Alumni Health Professionals. Thomas J. Blocker was a very phenomenal director of the Office of Health Professions. This is a time, like go back to resources are so key. But Tom Blocker had the resources and he had the ideas, and he was only limited by his creativity. That's where you want to go. So these young men have gotten together, they have their organization, they sponsor a lot of our events, they have created clinical opportunities, the intensive clinical exposure program, which means all these young men that want to go to medical school have an opportunity to really work in some of their actual places of employment. Again, we've talked about this, Todd, Dr. Esther, and again, there is the potential. I see Jordan Brunson, I see Javier, and so on. The dentists are also getting together to make sure. I think some of your schools require as many as 100 hours of clinical experience. So we are in the ballpark. We are going to make sure that our students are actually ready because of these gentlemen, these phenomenal gentlemen, Morehouse alumni. And again, if you missed that piece, particularly if you're an undergraduate entity, you have to have an office like the Office of Health Professions. I mean, basically, we are the place of calm. When the storm is, going crazy, the students can come to us, we can talk to them, and you'd be surprised what they're going through. Being a young man, black man in America today is a very different story altogether. So again, the office does a lot of phenomenal things, including providing MCAT prep. Guess what? DAT MCAT prep at a discount because of these gentlemen here. Again, they really play a vital role to the success of our story at Morehouse College.
Thank you so much, Doc. And when you think about that on the slide, a couple of the names that people will recognize, Dr. David Satcher and Dr. Lewis Sullivan. But again, being able to, the work and the impact they've had throughout the country and the world, and the work that many of these gentlemen and others have had is just phenomenal. So we heard Dr. Mitchell say it earlier as he was making some good trouble. Maybe there's a need for another HBCU dental school as a possibility for how we can address men of color in the health professions. Is it an ideal whose time has come? Could it also be centered in a way that also reaches out to men of color from across all of our historically represented ethnic groups to address the parity gaps that exist for African American males, Latino males, Native American males? Could it be that entity that helps build a robust pathway to the health careers programs? Could it also help support a robust interprofessional IPE program, getting care out into the communities, particularly in the, in this case, the Atlanta community? And could it address issues of oral and systemic health inequities in our communities in a profound way? We know Atlanta is situated with the Institutes of Health in the space, as well as with a very robust population of historically represented individuals. We took the liberty to go ahead and put this on the slide, Morehouse School of Dentistry, but it sounds like it has a pretty good ring. It sounds like it has a pretty good ring. Yeah, I think that could work a little bit. We also had a chance to engage Dr. Sullivan, and he wants to talk to us more, give us the history of when the Morehouse School of Medicine was created. He let us know that they wanted to have a Morehouse School of Dentistry. But much like Dr. Krabrovsky said in some regards on how he gets support for different initiatives, he said the dentists didn't want to play, he said. And so we got to go further in that regard. But we do have a roadmap. Dr. Sullivan has written the book, The Morehouse Mystique, and in it he delineates the story of how the Morehouse School of Medicine was created. And so also offer us a roadmap for what maybe could be a possibility for collaborative work across multiple disciplines to make this possible. So what do you think would be the most helpful strategy to increase the number of men of color? Here's another engagement opportunity for you. Get out your devices, please. Going into the oral health field, and select your top 3. Having a dedicated director, dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion at your dental medical school for recruitment. Would it be having more funds for student scholarships for men of color? We've heard a lot of conversations today about funds. Having summer programs for college juniors and seniors to help also facilitate that entry into dental school that could link up with our SHPEP program, the amazing work that it's doing, but our ability to have another program for our juniors and seniors so we don't lose them before it's time to enter dental or medical school. Mentorship and support groups for men of color, holistic admission processes, early educational intervention, K or P through 12, or an additional HBCU dental school for men of color. This is your chance to answer. Give us some thoughts about what do you think will be the most helpful strategy to increase the number of men of color going to the oral health field? All of the above, he says. Right. All of the above. Wow. Yes. Research opportunities. So we have Dr. Sirak Webster. She's going to bring a comment for us right when we get done to open up, my friend. Thank you. But of course, this list is just a starter list. It's not meant to be all-inclusive, but thank you. Research opportunities will be added to it as well. And so we see where you're trending right now. Summer programs, director of the dean of diversity at your school, and having more funds for student scholarships. I'm missing a few. Early intervention hasn't showed up quite yet. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Feel free to continue answering this. We'll be able to see the results. For sake of time, we're going to move forward with some of our tips. We've heard a lot of great information, particularly about the need for collaboration, but we understand inclusive leadership is really paramount. So we thank all of our leaders. I see so many deans, present sitting deans in our space today. Thank you so much. That makes the difference in what we can do, particularly when we talk about an office of diversity or a recruiter or an opportunity for people to actually go and do the work of creating programs. Supporting admissions hiring, involving all stakeholders. Our students, we have students here in the room today as well, and thank you for coming out today, current dental students. Our students have such a role to play in how we reach out through the internet, through social media, how they link up in their student national dental organizations or Society of American Indian Dentists or Hispanic Student Dental Associations is profound to our program. Our LGBTQ+ organizations, our students are doing the work to help our communities be inclusive, so thank you. Establishing and sustaining a robust Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, having a Chief Diversity Officer to engage in admissions decisions, also to hold the purse for scholarships to their students as well once they get them admitted. Being a part of the leadership team in our schools we feel is paramount. Partnering with our HBCUs, MSIs, and tribal colleges is important. Supporting pathways to dentistry programs such as CHPEP, dental school pre-matriculation programs, conducting climate studies and utilizing the results once you get them, and making recommendations that can be implemented for culture change and to shift the cultures. Engaging committees such as multicultural affairs committees can be helpful, can be a strategy, bringing staff, student, and alumni together and faculty together, bringing them into a level space where they can just exist as human beings and engage the needs of your community, paramount. Providing cultural sensitivity and cultural humility training is important. It's particularly racial healing. We have done work in that space, and it's just an amazing opportunity to bring us all together. And recruiting leadership, faculty, staff, and students from diverse backgrounds. These are some of the tips we will share. You also have in your package this diversity, equity, and inclusion spectrum tool. We will ask you to take this home and engage your community around how you see your lens for men of color or your organization, how you see what you can do and rate yourself on what you're doing for men of color going into the oral health professions, and whether you're an organization or an actual school. That will list itself out as far as decision makings, and on a 5-point scale, you can rate where your school falls. This is a great conversation starter at your school with your colleagues and getting a team around this work so we can make that impact that we would like to make. Lastly, what is one thing that you, each and individually you, are committing to do once you return to campus or to your organization that will increase the number of men of color in dentistry, medicine, or research? And again, here's our Slido. So what is one thing? This is an open-ended one, so you can type a little bit. Just take a moment to reflect. But what is one thing, after hearing all of these amazing presenters, information that's been shared, and the heart that's been shared in all of our work and our presenters today, what is one thing you are committing to do once you return to campus that will help increase the number of men of color in dentistry, medicine, or research? Talk to the EDI director, setting up mentorship programs, be persistent, mentorship to undergraduate students on campus, reaching out to pre-health care, starting some good trouble. Mentorship, again, working on memorandums of understanding. Yes, memos of understanding are important with HBCUs. Mentoring one undergraduate, creating more resources, hiring practices to ensure folks buy into health equity. Money, money, money. Yes, whoever said that, please come see us at the end of the presentation. Collaborate with the HBCU, boost scholarships, ask the dean for more funds. Dean's in the room. They're going to come to you this week. Please don't say no. Focus on alumni engagement. There hasn't been any at some schools. So great ideal. So they picked that ideal up from this presentation. Being intentional. Recruit our men of color grads to serve as mentors. Thank you for engaging, and please continue to do so. I think we have time for a couple questions. I know I already heard one from Dr. Syriac-Webster, and hands are already going up. Dr. Contreras, we have time for a few comments or questions?
We only have time for like 2 questions.
Please leave that out for us, sir. I'm going to leave this slide up so you can still type your answers.
I'll go ahead with the lady first, and then I'll go.
I'm just going to be very quick. Hi, everybody, and this has been amazing. So I want to follow up with Trouble. And many of us are from Big Ten schools, and I know that's very cool. My husband loves basketball and whatever. You know what school I'm from, and it's a great school, but why are we giving coaches millions of dollars? Why, you know, I'm all for athletics. I'm a little bit of a runner, but we are sending the wrong message. Okay, those schools that have all of that money to give, because I have no money to give my students, okay? But I know that the athletes, and they deserve it, please don't get me wrong, but something is very wrong, and they talk about diversity, but it's at the top, they're not making the investment on the people that they should be investing. And our men of color are getting the wrong message. And I love your program. I have been privileged to participate, so thank you, because It really is an honor for me. So please, please, we need money. This is all wonderful stuff, mentors and all of that, we do that, but we need the money. I want to work at that school.
All right.
Okay.
All right.
First of all, Todd, this was tremendous. I'm going to share a bit of history before you guys leave. In 1850, there was a young African-American printer who decided he wanted to go to medical school. He was a Freeman. He entered Harvard with 2 other African-Americans and was summarily expelled because the white students refused to go to school with him. Through his own perseverance, he ended up getting his medical degree from Dartmouth in 1854. Went on to practice medicine for probably 16 years, where he died in 1869 after he decided he was going to establish a clinic for the freed slaves. Family lore is that he was poisoned. That doctor was my great-great-grandfather. He would be proud of you guys today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you for the time. Please thank our esteemed panel and everyone who has presented today. Special thanks to the committee, and we are going to turn it over to Dr. West, but also just know that we are bound by an inescapable web of mutuality tied together by a single thread of destiny. What impacts one of us directly impacts us all. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Dr. West, thank you.
Let you stay up here. Okay. You can stay. You don't have to leave. Yeah. Okay, it's fine. This has been such an informative and inspiring afternoon. But before we close, I need to thank a couple of people. We need to thank Dr. Carla Smith, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Associate Professor at the Virginia Commonwealth School of Dentistry. Dr. Patrick Smith, Assistant Professor at the University of Illinois College of Dentistry. Along with Dr. Todd Esther, Assistant Dean for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and Clinical Assistant Professor at the University of Michigan School of Dentistry, for agreeing, all 3 of these are agreeing to draft the symposium proceedings for the Journal of Dental Education. Again, I would like to thank our sponsors, the American Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation for their support. The ADEA President's Symposium Men of Color Planning Committee, the AAMC, and the ADEA Access, Diversity, and Inclusion team, and Dr. Sonia Smith particularly for their hard work. I would also like to thank each of you for being here this afternoon and helping us expand this conversation, discuss strategies and next steps to increase the number of men of color in health professions and resources to support them. After listening and learning today, I plan to reach out to presidents and CEOs of other academic health professions and our partners and our other professional organizations to invite them to help develop a formal action collaborative on advancing men of color in the academic health professions and the related workforce, because I believe that many sometimes can do more than us alone.
Yes.
With representatives from these groups, we can then begin to take next steps, collaborate on a strategic action plan, and determine priorities. The funding support from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation over the next year will assist us in our initial efforts to bring our partners and representatives from these associations together and to expand our work with experts to strategize. Again, thank you for being here. For those of you staying for the annual session and exhibition, enjoy the rest of the conference. This symposium is closed, so go next door to the reception. Thank you.